Chapter 2982. What terrifying cultivation! He can kill a chaotic prime with a single roar. That's no ancient beast. He's clearly a supreme expert. Esteemed Qing M.O. What an esteemed Qing M.O. Jianshin's face became extremely ugly. Now that things had developed like this, he obviously understood that he had fallen for esteemed Qing Mo's trap and had been sent to a dangerous place by his teleportation formation. Merely, no matter what, he was unable to understand why esteemed Lady Qing M.O. would frame him like this. If esteemed Lady Qing M.O. already knew that he was Yang Yutian and coveted the resources he obtained from the Dark Star realm, however, the resources were all on him right now, so that did not make sense. Aside from that, he really could not think of any other reason why esteemed Qing M.O. would harm him. Jianshin glanced past the formation, and his face paled. He did not need to test it at all to see that the formation was extremely powerful. It was impossible for him to shake it up with his current strength. I can't summon the martial Soul Mountain. The person who's come is far too terrifying. If I draw the martial Soul Mountain over, I'll end up harming my seniors on the martial Soul Mountain instead. I can only fuse the twin swords now. Jianshin's eyes were filled with determination. He immediately communicated with the sword spirits and prepared to fuse the twin swords. A half-step Grand Exalt. Master, this person basically has half a foot in the realm of Grand Exalts. With our current strength, we can't harm him even if we fuse the twin swords, Xing said. What? A half-step Grand Exalt? Jianshin was surprised. Although he knew the person was very powerful, he had never expected him to be this powerful. Since we can't harm him, let's use the twin swords to attack the formation here, Jianshin said coldly. He had run out of options. He could only give up everything and put up a final struggle. At this moment, terrifying laws that made even Jianshin's face change suddenly appeared. The entire nameless planet immediately shook violently. Spears appeared one after another in space. Every single spear was condensed from extremely powerful laws. They shone with dazzling light and possessed devastating power. Whoosh! In the next moment, all the spears tore through the air and shot towards Jianshin. The powerful formations guarding the heavenly resources were unable to stop the spears at all. The spears passed through them like they were nothing, directly piercing through the formations. Under the lock of the law spears, Jianshin was unable to move at all. Just the terrifying pressure from the law spears was enough to crush his body. Is this the strength of a half-step Grand Exalt? Jianshin felt bitter inside. Originally, he wanted to use the fusion of the twin swords to get through the formation. But only now did he understand that before a half-step Grand Exalt, he did not even have the chance to use the fusion of the twin swords with his current strength. Jianshin, don't resist! However, at this moment, a voice that Jianshin found extremely familiar suddenly rang out. The middle-aged man had already walked in from outside the formation. He waved a medallion at Jianshin from afar. With that, violet light immediately shone, enveloping Jianshin in a single instance. Jianshin felt like he had entered a different world as he bathed in the violet light. All the pressure he had experienced earlier vanished in a single instance, and he could not sense the terrifying, killing intent from the law spears at all. Although Jianshin could no longer sense any pressure, the law spears did not vanish. They continued to radiate with a devastating presence as they stabbed into the violet light that enveloped Jianshin without weakening at all. There was no explosion as expected. There was not even the slightest ripple of energy. When these terrifyingly powerful law spears stabbed into the purple light, they simply vanished into thin air without causing the slightest ripple. Jianshin stared at this with widened eyes. Every single one of the law spears had been condensed from extremely high levels of laws. Any single one of them was enough to kill low-level Grand Primes. Yet they just vanished when they came in contact with the violet light. What was happening in front of him was clearly beyond his understanding. But soon after, His gaze landed on the middle-aged man not far away. His pupils immediately shrank as disbelief appeared on his face. "Shen Jian, why are you here?" The middle-aged man was Shen Jian, also known as Dugu Qiubai from his previous life, the great ruler of the world of Forsaken Saints, the Spirit King. Roar! At this moment, another great roar rang out from the other side of the planet. This time, Jianqin did not sense any attacks, as he was surrounded by violet light. However, he saw the entire planet tremble violently from the roar. He also saw countless mountains collapse in the desolate region beyond the oasis. Pieces of land sank as red lava was pushed into the sky. With the roar, a stalwart figure immediately charged over from the other side of the planet, radiating with a powerful presence that seemed to be able to crush the stars. A sliver of mixed feelings flashed through Shen Jian's eyes as he stared at the stalwart figure. He held the medallion as he was enveloped by a layer of violet light, as if he was in another world. As a result, no matter how terrifying the half-step Grand Exalt was, Shen Jian was not affected at all. In the next moment, Shen Jian formed a seal. The seal seemed to draw in a power from the surroundings. Immediately, countless chains of order condensed in the air. They danced in the surroundings, forming traces of the ways. They immediately wrapped around the terrifying half-step Grand Exalt. The half-step Grand Exalt struggled wildly in the air. The divine chains wrapped around him shook violently. The terrifying power caused large swathes of space to collapse. However, as the power of the chains of order rapidly increased, his struggles finally became more and more powerless. After several dozen breaths, he completely stopped struggling. He hung in midair under the restraint of the divine chains of order, and the sound of heavy breathing could be heard. In the next moment, the divine chains that extended from the void began to elongate without limit. The supreme expert, who had been bound in the air, also slowly descended to the ground as the chains lengthened. He then dragged the chains with him as he walked with heavy steps towards the Saint Blood Dao fruit. Jianqin's gaze remained fixed on the supreme expert. He was tall and burly. He wore tattered robes, and his messy hair completely covered his face. It was impossible to see what he looked like. Chapter 2983. Senior Feng. Shen Jian knew that the most dangerous moment had passed. He walked out of the formation with Jianqin before stowing the medallion away. With a few flashes, they arrived beside the supreme expert. Senior Feng, this is Jianqin. He can be said to be my only friend in this world, Jianqin introduced. Shen Jian arrived beside the supreme expert, wrapped in chains of order, and introduced Jianqin to him. On the other hand, Shen Jian completely turned a blind eye to the divine chains of order that coiled around this supreme powerhouse. He seemed to be used to it since a long time ago. Nearby, Jianqin stood there and studied the person whom Shen Jian had referred to as Senior Feng. The supreme expert's heart churned, unable to calm down for quite some time. He was a supreme expert whom the sword spirits had called a half-step Grand Exalt, a person who could destroy the world with a flip of his hand, yet he was bound by chains of order. He seemed like a prisoner. At the same time, Jianqin realized that there was something wrong with the half-step Grand Exalt before him when he heard the demon-like roar from the person before him. However, he was even more puzzled and perplexed about why Shen Jian had appeared here. Moreover, it seemed like Shen Jian's relationship with the supreme expert was anything but ordinary. He had even keenly observed Shen Jian's hand seals when the peerless expert was running towards him. Jianqin understood that the chains around the supreme expert had only appeared when Shen Jian had formed hand seals earlier. In other words, the supreme expert had been bound by Shen Jian. For a moment, Jianqin was filled with doubts. Is this your friend? Why has he appeared here? Why has he entered the formation of the Saint Blood Fruit? Asked the disheveled Senior Feng. His voice was extremely hoarse, filled with great doubt and confusion. It was also at this moment that Senior Feng slowly raised his head. He pushed aside the long hair in front of his forehead, revealing a pair of turbid eyes. He looked as if he hadn't woken up yet. His eyes were filled with confusion. I came through a teleportation formation and landed beside the Saint Blood fruit as soon as I appeared, said Gentian. A teleportation formation? Clearly, Senior Feng had not completely woken up. He had not sorted out many of his thoughts. He murmured softly before asking in confusion, "Where did the teleportation formation come from? And why is there a teleportation formation here?" After he finished speaking, Senior Feng sank into a period of silence. Soon after, the confusion in his eyes gradually receded. The turbidity also gradually disappeared, and his eyes slowly began to shine brightly. At the same time, his entire temperament had undergone an earth-shattering change. Although he still looked like a beggar, there was a domineering aura around him that made him feel like he was the only one in the world. It was as if he had only completely woken up at this moment. In the next moment, his figure suddenly disappeared. He had silently appeared in the matrix, where the divine blood fruit had been planted. However, the divine chains of order on his body were still tightly wrapped around him, the power of the great path entwined around him, forming a suppressive force. Senior Feng completely ignored the divine chains around him, but he did not break free from them either. His eyes became extremely deep, as if they were nurturing an infinite universe. Endless great paths intertwined and laws evolved. He was currently comprehending the mysteries of the world and resonating with the great path. He could see through the past and future. Even though he had yet to truly become a sovereign of the great path, he could still see many secrets through his divination. It's actually them. A while later, Senior Feng seemed to have understood everything. He stopped divining, and a sliver of sharpness flashed through his eyes. "Jianqin, tell old man all the details of how you came here." Feng Zun looked at Jianqin as a strange light flickered through the depths of his deep eyes. Very soon, Senior Feng learnt the details from Jianqin. He said, "Jianqin, you've been set up by someone. The esteemed Qing MO you speak of is only someone who's being used." Jianqin frowned when he heard that. Esteemed Qing MO was also being used? This was rather unexpected, but it also made sense. After all, he could not understand why esteemed Qing MO wanted to set him up, no matter how he thought about it. How would this benefit esteemed Qing MO? However, he also could not figure out just who was hiding in the shadows and going to such great lengths to set him up. The person who set you up is the Myriad Bone Guild. However, with their strength, killing you is a piece of cake. Yet they went to such great lengths to send you to Old Man. The Old Man can only think of one reason for their true intentions, which is for you to die to Old Man's hands. Senior Feng looked at the space ring on Gentian's finger and continued with his hoarse voice. "There's a divine beast with an extraordinary bloodline in the divine hall you carry. I can sense the presence of the essence blood of a grand exalt of the Darkstar clan from the divine beast. However, the divine beast is just too weak. It's nowhere near enough to refine a droplet of essence blood from a grand exalt. The Saint Blood fruit is indeed the only thing that can save it." As a result, from the moment the bloodline of the divine beast mutated to the moment you arrived on this planet through the teleportation formation, the Myriad Bone Guild has been plotting everything from behind the scenes. They know that you need the Saint Blood fruit urgently, so they've come up with a way to get you here. Even if you don't need the fruit, they'll use other methods, excuses, and reasons to get you here. This is because if Old Man loses the suppression of the ancestral artifact's power, he'll lose his mind and fall into a frenzy. He'll kill all outsiders, whether you obtain the Saint Blood fruit or not. Only death awaits you in Old Man's frenzied state. The Myriad Bone Guild. It's actually the Myriad Bone Guild. Jianqin's face became extremely ugly. He said, "Why? Why would they go to such great lengths to get me to die at Senior's hands? With their strength, killing me is as easy as flipping their hand." Senior Feng's gaze suddenly darkened. The reason is very simple. They want to deal with Old Man, but they're not his opponent, which is why they've set their sights on you. Chapter 2984. Jianchen was immediately filled with doubt when he heard what Senior Feng said at the end. An extremely powerful expert stood behind him. Moreover, he held an extremely important position in the expert's heart, so important that if he died, this expert would not hesitate to seek vengeance from Senior Feng. If Senior Feng were only an ordinary Grand Prime, that would make sense. After all, although he did not share any blood ties with the martial soul lineage, due to the uniqueness of the martial soul lineage's legacy, all the successors of the martial soul lineage were fated to be the most trusted and most important brothers. With the strength of the martial soul lineage, it would make sense for them to deal with regular Grand Primes. However, now that he knew Senior Feng's strength, the martial soul lineage definitely did not possess that strength. Jianchen thought of the young war god of the god clan, Taita. He also thought of his second sister, Chanyang Mingyue, who had yet to recover. Although he was on good terms with the two of them, even Jianchen was uncertain whether they would stand up for him when it came to experts on Senior Feng's level. Is it Taita, or my second sister, or the samsaric immortal exalt of the immortal's world? Jianchen thought. He directly rejected the first majesty of the heavenly palace of Bishing. He was not an important figure to the heavenly palace of Bishing. Even if he had contributed to the return of the Inata Tower, it was nowhere near enough for the first majesty of the heavenly palace of Bishing to become enemies with an expert who stood at the same level as her for his death. At this moment, Senior Feng suddenly extended a finger and extended it towards Jianchen gently. Jianchen immediately felt an invisible power shoot off into the unknown through him. Senior Feng, what are you doing? Jianchen's face changed. Although Senior Feng's gesture seemed like nothing special, he could clearly sense an unbelievably tremendous power from it. It touched upon laws and order. Kill Master Qingma, Senior Feng said calmly. Jianchen's heart shivered when he heard that. This was a nameless planet. Who knew how far away it was from planet Tianming, and Master Qingmo was a first heavenly layer Grand Prime. How could a simple finger from Senior Feng kill him? This immediately refreshed Jianchen's understanding of the strength of a half-step Grand Exalt. Senior Feng, Master Qingmo, has also been used by the Myriad Bone Guild. Although he's guilty, his sins aren't too severe. Please teach him a lesson. Jianchen clasped his fists. It's not as simple as you think. Old Man isn't a murderous person. If possible, Old Man wouldn't want to kill Master Qingmo. However, Master Qingmo needs to die right now, or Shun Jian will die, said Senior Feng. Shin Jian was confused when he heard that. He asked in confusion, Senior Feng, I've never interacted with Master Qingmo before, so why does his death have to do with my own safety now? Senior Feng sat down on the ground. The chains of order around him shone with dazzling light, clearly suppressing everything. He looked at the surroundings and said slowly, the two people from the Myriad Bone Guild should have discovered that the old man was hiding here many years ago. They should have investigated the old man's situation and everything on this planet. As for the heavenly treasures planted here, they were all originally left for this old man, especially the Saint Blood Dao fruit. It's an important item that will determine whether or not this old man will be able to take that crucial step. As a result, even if the old man is in a frenzy, he will subconsciously protect the Saint Blood Dao fruit. Once someone steals the fruit, the old man will definitely kill that person. Not only will it be the person who steals the fruit, but with the old man's cultivation, he can clearly see all the people involved in this from you. In his fury, the old man obviously won't let the person behind the scenes go. As a result, the old man can only act against the person behind the scenes at the same time to make the Myriad Bone Guild believe that everything is going according to their plan. At the same time, it's equivalent to releasing a signal to them that you've already died at the hands of the old man. If he doesn't do this, it'll be easy to make mistakes and make the Myriad Bone Guild suspicious. What he will face later is the two of them personally coming to investigate. The old man isn't afraid of them, but if that's the case, Shen Jian's existence will naturally not be hidden. Even if Shen Jian leaves now, with the Myriad Bone Guild's methods, they will find out sooner or later. If the Myriad Bone Guild knows that the old man thinks so highly of Shen Jian, let alone thinking highly of him, even if they have the slightest contact with him, with their way of doing things, they definitely won't let Shen Jian go. Moreover, Shen Jian hasn't been able to leave this planet in recent years. As a result, the old man can only act like everything is under the Myriad Bone Guild's control in order to make them lower their guard. Senior Feng smiled mysteriously and continued. Actually, the old man's strike might not have been able to kill the esteemed Qing Mo. Although he's far weaker than the old man, he's still a Grand Prime after all. It really will be rather difficult for the old man to kill him in a single strike from so far away. However, the old man believes that the Myriad Bone Guild will help. This is because I only saw Guru Qing Mo's shadow behind you. I didn't discover the slightest connection between this matter and the Myriad Bone Guild. I could only deduce the secrets of the heavens based on what you said earlier and discover what they did based on the various clues. They've gone to such great lengths to conceal themselves, never personally taking part in any of the matters. They're only responsible for adding fuel to the fire without leaving behind any traces. Clearly, they want the Myriad Bone Guild to completely stay out of this matter. As a result, they can only completely escape with the esteemed Qing Mo's death. Senior Feng sighed gently and said, in order to prevent them from discovering Shen Jian's existence, and in order to make them believe that you're dead, the old man can only sacrifice the esteemed Qing Mo. Senior Feng's voice was filled with deep helplessness. Suddenly, Senior Feng trembled, and his expression changed. He said in a hurry, it's time. The old man needs to leave. Jianchen, you have to remember that you can't leave without the old man's permission, or you'll be harming Shen Jian. As for the Saint Blood Fruit, it was indeed extremely important to the old man in the beginning. But now, this old man no longer has any use for it. I originally planned to leave it for Shen Jian. As for how to distribute it now, Shen Jian, you can decide for yourself. Senior Win's body trembled more and more violently. His face was contorted, and the aura on his body fluctuated unstably. It was obvious that his time of lucidity had come to an end, and he was about to lose his crazed state. Chapter 2985. On planet Tianming, the heartless child sat on the top floor of the Pill Dao Tower in the Pill King's clan. He chatted idly with Master Qing Mo, showing no signs of leaving. However, his gaze was erratic. Sometimes he would look into the sky, and sometimes he would look at Qing Mo. His gaze was filled with anticipation and anxiety. This was because they had reached the critical moment of whether or not they could resolve the Myriad Bone Guild's greatest danger. Once the plan went smoothly, the Myriad Bone Guild would be completely free from their current predicament. With the threat of Feng Zunjie gone, the restriction from the Dark Star race had been extended indefinitely due to Genshin's destruction. Once the Dark Star world finished preparing for the next great ceremony, regardless of the success rate, their Myriad Bone Guild might give birth to a grand exalt. At that time, the restraints that the Dark Star race had placed on them would naturally be removed. However, if the plan did not go smoothly this time, the Myriad Bone Guild would have gone for wool and come home shorn. Not only would they have to deal with the danger from the Wind Venerable, but the Anita Grand Exalt would definitely learn about their scheme against Genshin. Killing Genshin was equivalent to cutting off the Anita Grand Exalt's path of ways. Just the thought of the consequences was terrifying. Even someone like the heartless child shivered. The plan has to succeed. Don't make any mistakes. Even someone like the heartless child prayed inside. He was extremely nervous. The Myriad Bone Guild needed to erase all traces of their futile attempt to use an Ata to kill the Wind Venerable. As a result, he did not dare to investigate where the Wind Venerable was carelessly afraid that he would leave behind traces that would be difficult to erase. The only way to determine whether the plan was successful or not was to rely on Master Ching, Mo, Guru Ching, Mo, could clearly tell that the heartless child had a lot on his mind. After all, there were very few things in the world that could affect an expert at the heartless child's level. Yet now he could see the uneasy side of the heartless child. While this made him curious, he also felt rather uneasy. He could not help but think of Jianqin. Is it related to Jianqin? Ching Mo thought. However, at this moment, the heartless child seemed to sense something. The worry in his heart was instantly swept away. He smiled resplendently and said to Ching Mo happily, Master Ching Mo, are you curious about what's affecting me and making me feel uneasy? Ching Mo was puzzled. He smiled awkwardly. You must be joking. How can I guess what's on your mind? He. Even if you want to guess, you will never be able to guess it. Since you want to know, then I will tell you. The heartless child opened his mouth, revealing a mouthful of pearly white teeth. However, the smile on his face became even stranger. What makes me uneasy is actually you, old man. I've always been worried about whether you'll die or not. The smile on Ching Mo's face froze. His skinny body stiffened as well. A bone-chilling intent rose from the bottom of his heart, making him feel cold all over. Even though the heartless child's tone was relaxed and he had a smile on his face, Master Ching Mo felt a murderous intent from the heartless child. Vice House Head, this joke is a little too big. For a person of the Vice House Head's level, this old man's life is just a cheap life. Of course, if the Vice House Head requires my services, I will definitely do my best. Master Ching Mo's voice trembled slightly. The heartless child's smile became even more resplendent. That's right. To our myriad bone guild, a first heavenly layer Grand Prime like you who only knows how to refine pills and whose battle prowess is only at the bottom of the same level is indeed a cheap life. If Shang Yi was still alive, killing you would be a piece of cake. Unfortunately, you're unlucky. You've become involved in a battle between peak figures, and it's directly related to the fate of our myriad bone guild. Old man Ching Mo, if you don't die, our myriad bone guild will be destroyed sooner or later. On the other hand, if you die, our myriad bone guild will have nothing to worry about anymore. Ha! The heartless child laughed aloud. At that moment, he no longer tried to be secretive. He had become completely fearless. Master Ching Mo immediately paled. His limbs trembled and his lips trembled. He was so terrified that he could not say anything. He wants to kill me. He actually wants to kill me. Artifact spirit, quick, self-destruct, so that the old man has time to escape. Master Ching Mo could no longer remain calm. He ordered the artifact spirit of the pill tower madly and was about to flee. Immediately, the pill tower's energy surged. This was a high-quality god artifact. Once it self-destructed, the power would be unimaginable. Although your pill tower is a high-quality god artifact, it's only barely reached the 7th class. It's still a little too weak to me, the heartless child said calmly. In the next moment, a powerful aura emanated from his body. An incomparably powerful will radiated from his body. This will was so strong that it seemed to have interfered with the heavenly Tao, establishing its own rules in the space within the alchemy pagoda. Instantly, the weapon spirit of the alchemy pagoda was restrained by the laws formed by the heartless child's will. The alchemy pagoda's self-destruction was also forcibly stopped. It was not just the pill tower's artifact spirit. Even Master Ching Mo was affected. After all, the heartless child was an expert who had surpassed Master Ching Mo in terms of cultivation. It was far too easy for him to deal with an alchemy grandmaster who was not good at fighting. However, he did not attack Master Ching Mo. He did not harm Master Ching Mo at all. Instead, he used the laws of his will to suppress Master Ching Mo, preventing him from unleashing his strength. Master Ching Mo was terrified. However, before he could say anything, A terrifying energy from an unknown space arrived from an extremely great distance away. It possessed the laws of the world and the power of the laws of the world. It shot towards Master Ching Mo as an invisible streak of light. If it were not for the heartless child's suppression, the invisible killing intent that came from afar might not have been able to kill Venerable Ching Mo. It would have only heavily injured Venerable Ching Mo at most if Venerable Ching Mo resisted with all his might. However, Master Ching Mo had been completely suppressed by the heartless child, let alone resisting or blocking. Even moving became extremely difficult. As a result, he had become a completely defenseless target of the killing light that had come from afar. The invisible killing light hit Ching Mo Shangren, and her body turned into ashes immediately. The killing light was just too powerful. When it killed Master Ching Mo, it destroyed his body as well. The heartless child, who had personally witnessed Guru Ching Mo's death, let out a carefree laugh. His body slowly vanished as he laughed. Boom! After the heartless child completely vanished, the high-quality god artifact, the Pill Tower, exploded with a great rumble that shook up outer space. The explosion of a high-quality god artifact was just too shocking. The shocking storm of energy wreaked havoc, destroying the entire Pill King's clan in an instant. All the infinite primes in the clan were wiped out by the explosion. They were unable to put up any resistance at all. After all, they were just too close to the Pill Tower, let alone infinite primes. Even some of the weaker chaotic primes from the Pill King's clan failed to endure the explosion of the high-quality god artifact. They followed in the footsteps of the regular elders. Chapter 2986. The incident with the Pill King's clan caused a huge uproar on planet Tianming. All the Grand Primes, Chaotic Primes, and even Infinite Primes hurried to the Pill King's clan. However, when they saw the fate of the Pill King's clan, everyone's faces became ugly, including the Grand Primes present. At the same time, a chill rose up from the bottom of their hearts, causing their hands and feet to turn cold. The Pill King's clan was a powerful clan that stood at the apex of planet Tianming and could even stir up a storm to a certain extent. Yet it had actually been destroyed with a flick of a finger? The destruction happened so quickly that all the Grand Primes who had come and even the Planet Lord were astounded. At this moment, the Planet Lord's face changed. He immediately waved his hand, and powerful energy permeated the surroundings. A bloodied figure was taken out from the ruins of the Pill King's clan. Is that the great elder of the Pill King's clan, Shen Wanqian? Someone immediately recognized the identity of this person based on the weak aura and immediately let out a cry of alarm. Shen Wanqian was the great elder with the highest cultivation in the Pill King's clan. He was an 8th heavenly layer, chaotic prime. Now he was the only survivor of the Pill King's clan. The Pill King's tower, the Pill King's tower, the Pill King's tower suddenly blew itself up. Our Pill King's clan is done for. Shen Wanqian immediately woke up. When he opened his eyes and saw the fate of the Pill King's clan, he immediately became filled with grief and grief. The Pill King's tower blew itself up? Everyone looked at each other when they heard that. The news of the Pill King's clan's destruction spread beyond planet Tianming very quickly. It gradually spread to the nearby planes and planets. The destruction of a peak clan was no small matter, let alone the fact that the clan that had been destroyed was the Pill King's clan. Although the Pill King's clan was not powerful, ranking towards the bottom among peak clans, they could not avoid various benefits from the outside world as an alchemy clan. As a matter of fact, many peak organizations had even requested the Pill King's clan to refine pills for them. They had even given large quantities of precious materials to the Pill King's clan. Now that the Pellet King's clan was annihilated, all of their resources were destroyed. This naturally affected the interests of many great powers. Some of these top-notch great powers who had suffered losses chose to stand by and watch. However, there were also some great powers who boasted that they were not weak. They immediately sent people to the heavenly underworld planet to investigate. There were even some top experts who owed Master Ching Mo a favor for refining pills. They personally came from all over the Pill King's clan to fight for justice for the Pill King's clan. For a time, the destruction of the Dan King's clan set off huge waves in the heavenly underworld star. Many top powers from outside the heavenly underworld star arrived. Even the people from the Star Brilliance plane have come. That's a place where the 9 Brilliance Star Lord personally watches over. There are countless experts there. Even a single peak organization that isn't in the top 10 can crush our heavenly underworld planet. It's actually the 5-Sex Point Cloud Venerable. Grand Elders, please follow the old man to pay your respects to the Point Cloud Venerable. The Point Cloud Venerable of the 5-Point Sect had personally come to the heavenly underworld planet. The planet lord and all the ancestors of the local clans all clasped their fists and bowed. They spoke extremely politely. However, the Point Cloud Venerable's complexion was rather ugly. He arrived above the Pelicans clan and stared at the flattened ground below. Not even a single blade of grass could be found. His eyes were rather sunken. 10 years ago, the old man gave all the heavenly resources he had gathered over several tens of thousands of years to the Master Ching Mo so that she could refine a few cauldrons of pills for the old man. I never thought that before the old man could refine the pills, the Pelicans clan would face such a disaster, the Point Cloud Venerable said with a heavy voice. As soon as he thought about his losses, his heart bled. Although he was an expert who watched over a region, he only focused on the laws of time and the laws of space. He knew nothing about pills, so he had to hire someone to refine all the pills he needed. The Pill Dao Tower wouldn't blow itself up for no reason. The old man would like to see just what happened to the Pellet King's clan. As soon as he finished speaking, the Point Cloud Venerable's figure instantly became illusory, as if he was no longer in this space. He had combined the laws of time and the laws of space, triggering wondrous effects that others could not understand. A river of time seemed to have appeared beneath the Point Cloud Venerable's feet. At that moment, he was moving against the flow of the river of time, as if he wanted to turn the world around and move the universe towards the past. However, very soon, the river of time beneath the Point Cloud Venerable shattered loudly. His body trembled violently, and he immediately grunted as if he had been heavily injured. His face immediately paled. It's actually... The Point Cloud Venerable's face was filled with shock. He struggled to maintain his composure. Point Cloud Venerable, please tell us why the Pellet King's clan was destroyed, said a great elder from another plane with clasped fists. He was filled with respect. The Point Cloud Venerable seemed to be rather absent-minded. He waved his hand and looked towards the depths of outer space as if he was afraid of something. I can't say. Whatever. The old man doesn't want these heavenly resources anymore. At most, I'll just gather them all again. Isn't it just time? The old man has lived for so long. What he lacks the least is time. With that, the Point Cloud Venerable vanished. In the depths of the sea of stars, the Point Cloud Venerable hurried through outer space, returning to the Star Brilliance plane. However, deep doubt and confusion filled his face. He murmured to himself, "That's strange. How did the Pellet King's clan anger the Wind Venerable to the point that the Wind Venerable would personally take action? With a great figure like the Wind Venerable, he wouldn't personally deal with someone who only knows how to refine pills like Master Ching Mo. The Point Cloud Venerable had only sensed the strand of power from the Wind Venerable through the river of time. As the Wind Venerable did not hide it at all, basically anyone who had reached a certain level of cultivation would be able to sense it. The Point Cloud Venerable failed to sense the existence of the Heartless child from the Myriad Bone Guild at all. Heartless, did the plan go smoothly? Were there any unexpected changes? In an unknown region of the Saints' world, an obscure voice rang out from a huge bone tower that hovered in the endless sea of stars. It was urgent as well as slightly nervous and worried. The Heartless child appeared on the top floor of the bone tower. He smiled happily and said, Jianshin has already gone over. Master Qing Mo has been killed by the Wind Venerable. Everything is under control. Now all we need to do is wait quietly. Once the Anata Grand Exalt returns and discovers that his fruit of ways has been destroyed by the Wind Venerable, the Wind Venerable will be dead for sure. Ha ha ha! The Anata Grand Exalt is not the Grand Exalt of ancient profundity from the immortals' world. Moreover, this is the saints' world. The Wind Venerable can escape from the Grand Exalt of ancient profundity, but that doesn't mean he can escape from the Anata Grand Exalt. The obscure voice fell silent for a while before continuing. Although the plan went smoothly, this matter is far too important. We can't be careless. I think we should personally go and check it out. It was possible to tell from the voice that the person was very hesitant, as if he feared something. Chapter 2987. The matter on planet Tianming continued to spread. It was not just because of the Pill King's clan's destruction, but because it was related to the interests of many large organizations in the Saints' world. As a result, more and more large organizations hurried over to planet Tianming. In the beginning, only elders and great elders had come. However, when they discovered that they could not find any clues about the Pill King's clan's destruction, they all reported it to their superiors, inviting the ancestors of their clans over. Aside from the clans that had dealings with the Pill King's clan, the network that Guru Qingmo had formed as a Pill Grandmaster began to take effect as well. Many experts who were on good terms with Guru Qingmo and owed her great favors worked together, declaring that they would search for the culprit and avenge Guru Qingmo. Some of the Grand Primes with great cultivation and abilities began to peer into the past, fusing with the ways of the world and understanding the past and future. Spurt. At this moment, a mist of blood spurted from the mouth of an ancestor of a peak organization. His face immediately paled. The Grand Prime's abnormality immediately attracted the attention of many experts. Their expressions immediately changed. This was because they could tell with a single glance that this was the result of a backlash. A Grand Prime had actually been injured by the backlash. Just how powerful was the backlash? This immediately caused everyone in the field to be extremely shocked. It's actually... The expression of the Grand Prime who had spurted blood changed rapidly as well. However, he was mostly confused. Ancestor of Wushan, what have you learnt? A Grand Prime from another clan asked. The ancestor of Wushan composed himself and recovered very soon. He glanced past everyone and said, Everyone, I'd like to give you a piece of advice. Stop investigating or you'll be in trouble. Let's not worry about the Pill King's clan anymore. With that, the ancestor of Wushan left planet Tianming without any hesitation. As for the remaining Grand Primes, they remained where they were and looked at one another. Since even Dark Mountain's ancestor is so wary, then let's not be so obstinate and continue investigating. Let's go. Old man doesn't want that cauldron of high-grade divine pills anymore. Sigh, what a pity. There are already very few alchemy grandmasters who can refine high-grade divine pills in the Saints' world. With Master Qingmo's death, there are even fewer alchemy grandmasters. More than half of the experts who had gathered at the Heavenly Underworld Star immediately left. However, there were still a few Grand Primes who wanted to get to the bottom of it, so they began to look into it. However, the result was no exception. Everyone was devoured by a terrifying power. After a moment of shock, they left without saying a word. Several native ancestors of the Heavenly Underworld Star were unable to deduce the slightest clue, so they wanted to ask these foreign masters the reason for the destruction of the Pellet King's family. However, all the ancestors of the great forces who thought they knew the truth were afraid of this matter and did not dare to mention a single word. Just like that, the destruction of the Pellet King's family became a mystery on the Heavenly Underworld Star. On the nameless star hidden in the vast void, there was a temple standing there quietly. The divine hall was not of a particularly high grade. It was only a supreme quality saint artifact, but its presence was not weak. It stood several thousand meters tall, making it quite majestic. At this moment, Jianqin and Shenjian stood together in the divine hall. Between the two of them was the unconscious Siyu, who had reverted to his original form. Siyu's situation is extremely bad. The essence blood of a dark star Grand Exalt is too powerful. It's squeezing out the power of Siyu's bloodline step by step. Once the essence blood of a dark star Grand Exalt completely takes over Siyu's body, I don't know if Siyu will become a dark star or die. Jianqin said sternly. He was particularly heavy-hearted. Right now, the only thing that can save Siyu is the Saint Blood Dao Fruit. Jianqin looked at Shenjian. The Saint Blood Dao Fruit could be described as something that belonged to Shenjian. With the wondrous effects of the Saint Blood Dao Fruit that could greatly strengthen the power of bloodline, it would be extremely beneficial to Shenjian as well. If he gave the Saint Blood Dao Fruit to Siyu, Shenjian would basically lose a fortuitous encounter that could change his fate and future. Jianqin was stuck between a rock and a hard place. Jianqin, we can be considered as friends who have gone through life and death together. You've risked your life to come here for the Saint Blood Dao Fruit, so do you think I can refuse it to you? Jian stared at Jianqin unhappily, as if he was an outsider. Enough with the nonsense. Since the Saint Blood Dao Fruit can save Siyu, let's give it to him quickly. Jianqin smiled. He opened his mouth, wanting to thank him, but he forcefully swallowed the words that were about to come out of his mouth. Jian was right. The two of them had come to the saint's world from the Tian Yuan continent. They had gone through life and death together, walking over the corpses of their enemies. Their friendship was so deep that it had already been imprinted into their souls. It was not something these so-called heavenly resources could compare to. Jianqin did not waste any more words. He immediately shoved the Saint Blood Dao Fruit into Siyu's mouth before assisting Siyu in refining it. Soon after he ingested the fruit, Siyu began to shine with a dense, blood-red light. The light was so powerful that it had basically solidified. In the end, it actually formed a huge, blood-red cocoon that enveloped Siyu. Not only was the vital energy within the fruit powerful, but its quality was extremely high as well. Jianqin's soul struggled to penetrate the cocoon formed from the dense, vital energy. As a result, Jianqin was unable to observe the situation within Siyu's body. However, Jianqin did not force his way in. He was confident in the Saint Blood Dao Fruit, and Senior Feng had said that the Saint Blood Dao Fruit could indeed save Siyu. As a result, Jianqin was extremely relieved. With Siyu's problem resolved, Jianqin could finally let go of a great burden. He no longer had any worries, which made him feel much more relaxed. Shenjian, how did you come here? Only now did Jianqin have the time to catch up with Shenjian. He looked at Shenjian and saw Shenjian's strength with a single glance. Third heavenly layer infinite prime. Even though Shenjian was already over 1,000 years old, he was only a little over 1,000 years old. In the vast saint's world, only Jianqin was known to have reached such a level of cultivation at such a young age. This was because there had never been a primordial realm expert under 1,000 years of age in the Dark Star world. Jianqin was the first to do so. Jianqin was not surprised by Shenjian's rapid progress because Shenjian's talent was definitely greater than Mingdong's. Back in the world of Forsaken Saints, where resources were scarce and the environment was horrible, he had reached reciprocity in just 800 years. Chapter 2988. Shenjian began to recount everything he had gone through after leaving the Tianyuan family. However, compared to Jianqin's rich and varied experiences, Shenjian's experiences could only be described as simple. He basically did not encounter many twists and turns. After leaving the Tianyuan family, he boarded a spatial battleship. After flying for a long period of time in the vast space, he was taken away from the spatial battleship by an extremely powerful force. Afterwards, he appeared on this nameless planet. It was only after he came to this planet that he found out that Senior Feng had coincidentally sensed his existence when he was awake. Senior Feng had personally brought him here. Afterwards, Shen Jian remained on this nameless planet to cultivate. He received personal guidance from Senior Feng, passing on many secret techniques to him. Even the precious heavenly resources planted there were free for Shen Jian to use as he pleased. Without any exaggeration, Shen Jian's relationship with Senior Feng was basically no different from that of a master and disciple, apart from the fact that they had not formally become his disciple. Due to some issues with Senior Feng, he's in a delirious state most of the time. He's insane, and he can even go berserk at any time. As a result, Senior Feng has passed on a technique to me so that I can use it to restrain him at crucial moments, so as to prevent him from making a huge mistake without knowing it. Once I use this technique to restrain Senior Feng, I can also make him fall into a temporary state of clarity. However, I can only use this technique as a last resort. This is because the power that binds Senior Feng is actually Senior Feng's own power. If Senior Feng is bound by this power while he's in a delirious state, even if it's his own power, he will subconsciously resist his own power since he has already lost his sense of self. When Senior Feng loses his sense of self, he obviously cannot overcome the restraints he sets up when he's awake. However, every time he resists his own power, he will cause Senior Feng a certain amount of damage. At this point, Shen Jian's eyes revealed a hint of pity, but it was more of sympathy and heartache. Every time Senior Feng woke up, he would spend all of his time teaching him, explaining the great Tao to him, pointing out the path of cultivation for him, and imparting many great arts to him. In Shen Jian's heart, he had long regarded Senior Feng as his own benevolent teacher. Therefore, Shen Jian was extremely worried about Senior Feng's current state. Then, do you know why Senior Feng became like this? Is there any way to make Senior Feng recover? Jianchen asked. He understood that the reason why Senior Feng left the distribution of the Saint Blood Tao fruit to Shen Jian was in fact equivalent to tacitly agreeing to give the Saint Blood Tao fruit to Siyu. Otherwise, a precious natural treasure like the Saint Blood Tao fruit would never have fallen into the hands of Siyu, even with Shen Jian's help. Jianchen felt gratitude towards Senior Feng for being so magnanimous. If it was possible, he did not mind helping Senior Feng out to repay the kindness of the Saint Blood Tao fruit. Shen Jian shook his head. I've asked Senior Feng about this more than once, but Senior Feng never said anything. He only told me to focus on cultivation. I think it's because I'm too weak. Even if there really is a way to help Senior Feng, my strength is nowhere near enough. Shen Jian paused when he reached there before studying Jianchen carefully. Jianchen, what level of cultivation are you at now? I can't see through your cultivation at all. A strange light flickered through Shen Jian's eyes. He believed that he was extremely fast for reaching the third heavenly layer of infinite prime at such a young age. This was because even Senior Feng had once given an extremely high evaluation of his cultivation. He had even said that, aside from the reincarnations of powerful existences, it would be difficult to find a second person with Shen Jian's rate of cultivation across the entire Saint's world. Shen Jian was very proud of his own progress. However, when he saw Jianchen, he felt uncertain. Jianchen smiled when he heard that. He said happily, I'm just slightly faster than you. I should be around the 8th heavenly layer of infinite prime now. Of course, because my cultivation method is a bit special, the way to measure my realm is also a bit different from yours. The 8th celestial layer is just a rough estimate. In reality, it might be a bit lower. Of course, it could also be a little higher. Jianchen only muttered these words in his heart, but he did not say them out loud. Shen Jian immediately became shocked. He stared at Jianchen blankly and was speechless for quite a while. This was because he knew Jianchen's background extremely well. He had spent over 1,000 years to reach the third heavenly layer of infinite prime. However, Jianqin had been born 800 years later than him in the lower world. Jianqin's true cultivation time was less than 1,000 years. Shan Jian was filled with admiration for him to reach such a level in just a few hundred years. The two old friends, who had not seen each other for many years, conversed with each other. They talked about their experiences and what they had seen and heard. They even talked about some matters regarding cultivation and their comprehension of the ways of the world. It was like they had endless things to talk about. They talked for 3 days and 3 nights, but they still did not end. "You've been to the Dark Star world?" "I've heard about the Dark Star race from Senior Feng. They used to be a peak race in the spirits world, and they possessed a supreme sovereign. However, in a battle of life and death against another peak race in the spirits world, the Wood Spirit race, the Dark Star race was defeated. Afterwards, they were trapped in a miniature world by the Wood Spirit race, never to come out. Otherwise, the current Dark Star race would have become a part of the Spirit Sages." Shen Jian sighed when he mentioned the Dark Star race. His heart was filled with indescribable mixed feelings. He had no idea whether he should sympathize with them or feel envious. This was because, although the Dark Star race seemed like they had been trapped, they had broken free from the conflict in the Saints' world. They had been spared from so much bloodshed. They could truly be described as carefree. They were unlike the current Spirit Sages, who had gone through so many trials and tribulations, who knew how many prodigies had died prematurely. "Oh, right. Shan Jian, what's the current strength of the Wood Spirit race like?" Jianqin suddenly became curious about the Dark Star race's archenemy, the Wood Spirit race. "I've heard from Senior Feng that they've completely declined. Not only do they not have a lot of clansmen left, but even their strongest experts are only chaotic primes. The Wood Spirit race no longer has much authority among the Spirit Sages. They're basically second tier," said Xinjian. "Sigh. I never thought that a peak race that used to possess a grand exalt would actually decline like this." Jianqin immediately sighed when he heard about the Wood Spirit race's current situation. His feelings were mixed. Chapter 2989. I don't know about that. However, I do have some understanding of the history of the Spirit Sages from the ancient records that Senior Feng gave me. It said that when the Spirit Sages world shattered, the entire world became uninhabitable. The countless races that originally lived in the Spirit Sages world were forced to leave their homeland in the end, moving to the Saints' world. During the years when we first arrived in the Saints' world, it was an extremely difficult trial for all the races in the Spirit Sages world. This was because the origin energy of the Spirit Sages world was different from the Saints' world. Not only were we unable to absorb the origin energy to cultivate when we first arrived in the Saints' world, but we were also ostracized and suppressed by the many native organizations in the Saints' world. That period of history was the darkest and most difficult time for all the races in the Spirit Sages world. It was also during that period of time that the Spirit Sages suffered heavy losses. In the battle against the races of the Saints' world, large batches of races were wiped out, and many of their treasures were stolen. The pressure from survival forced all the races in the Spirit Sages world to band together. They became a whole, forming the Spirit Sages clan later on. After combining their powers, the Spirit Sages clan finally managed to take root in the Saints' world after paying a great price. However, after the Spirit Sages clan stabilized and no longer faced any external pressure, internal conflicts gradually erupted. After all, there are simply too many clans within the spirit immortal realm. Each of them has their own territory within the spirit immortal realm, so they naturally coexist peacefully. Now that they've forcefully merged all the factions together, all sorts of conflicts will naturally arise. As a result, there have been several internal conflicts in the spirit's world. Many clans have broken away from the internal conflicts. They either hide somewhere in the Saints' world or leave the Saints' world to live on by themselves in a miniature world. Among them, the Wood Spirits split once. According to the ancient records, the Wood Spirit clan split into 3 forces during that time. These three forces each obtained a portion of the treasures passed down by the sovereign of the Wood Spirit Clan, and then completely parted ways. Two of the three forces each obtained the sovereign of the Wood Spirit Clan's two life artifacts, while the third force obtained the sovereign of the Wood Spirit Clan's core cultivation method. The two groups of wood spirits that obtained the sovereign's life-bound god artifacts broke away from the Spirit Sage's clan, and they disappeared without a trace. As for the branch of wood spirits that obtained the core cultivation method, they remained in the Spirit Immortal clan, and gradually declined from their former glory to this point. Shen Jian let out a long sigh at the sky when he reached there. He continued, "The Wood Spirits clan world are not the only races. They have happened to other races as well. The various treasures that have been passed down from the past of the Spirit Sage's world have all been lost. The Spirit Sage's world have all been passed down the Spirit Sage's world. The Spirit Sage's world had all been passed on. Spirit Sage's, and Sage's spirits all. And during this process of decline, the Spirit Sage's would face attacks from the Saints' world from time to time. When he reached there, Shen Jian glanced at Jianchen deeply and said, "The most recent disaster that the Spirit Sage's suffered came from the Myriad Bone Guild. Not only did the Myriad Bone Guild kill our Spirit Sage's in the past, but they also stole a large number of treasures. If it weren't for the fact that the ancestral artifact protected our Spirit Sage's at a crucial moment, the consequences would have been unthinkable." Jianchen sank into his thoughts. He said, "In other words, the Forsaken Saint clan you were from in the lower world was also a group that broke away from the Spirit Sage's clan in the past." Shen Jian hesitated before replying. "In the ancient records of our Forsaken Saint clan, it's always said that we were a race that had been abandoned by the Saints' world. As a result, our race was called the Forsaken Saint clan. Only after I met Senior Feng did I learn that the Forsaken Saint clan in the lower world was actually one of the great clans of the Spirit Sage's world, the Cosmic Sword Clan." The Cosmic Sword Clan? Jianchen was surprised when he heard that. He could be considered as someone who had read a lot of records. He believed that even if he did not know everything about the Saints' world, he knew most of it. However, he had never heard of the Cosmic Sword Clan. However, Senior Feng told me that the Cosmic Sword Clan no longer exists among the Spirit Sage's in the Saints' world. The Cosmic Sword Clan in the Saints' world has already gone extinct. Our group in the lower world is probably the only one left. Moreover, after so many years of reproduction, their bloodline has become impure. Our Forsaken Saint tribe's ancestor is called He Tuesday. I have told Senior Feng the name of ancestor He Tu, but Senior Feng doesn't have the slightest impression of him. He can only roughly deduce that ancestor He Tu isn't someone from this era. Perhaps Senior Feng hasn't even been born in his era. The He Tu ancestor left us some information regarding the Spirit Sage's in the past, but it's all outdated now." Jianchen gained a rough understanding of the history and current situation of the Spirit Sage's from Shen Jian. However, what truly caught his attention was the large number of legacies and treasures that had been lost to the outside world in the past. After all, before the Spirit Sage's world shattered, it was a complete world that had existed for countless eons. It was on the same level as the Saints' world. Who knew how many supreme experts had been born there, including even sovereigns of the world. Afterwards, all the treasures had been brought to the Saints' world with the destruction of the Spirit Sage's world. It was obvious just how plentiful they were. The Wood Spirit Clan was split into 3 groups. The 2 outside groups took away the life-bound god artifacts of the Wood Spirit Sovereigns. The life-bound god artifacts of the Sovereigns must be peak god artifacts on the same level as the Inata Tower and the Heavenly Palace of Bishing, Jianchen thought. Although Jianchen had never met the Grand Exalt of the Wood Spirit Clan, they had come into contact with each other on a superficial level. This was because the two-world mountain in the world of the fallen beast had been created from the remnant power of the wood Spirit, Grand Exalt. The life-devouring beasts that lived there possessed terrifying vitality and recovered so quickly that even Jianshin, who cultivated the chaotic body, felt rather stunned. He had basically witnessed the power of the wood Spirit, Grand Exalt. The two of them had finished talking, but Siyu remained in the form of a blood-red cocoon. As a result, Jianshin and Xinjian both entered cultivation. However, Jianshin's method of cultivation was very simple. He took out Gusta's fleshly core and began to absorb the tremendous energy within it before refining it into chaotic force. After reaching the 15th layer of his chaotic body in the Dark Star realm, the chaotic Niden in his Dantian had returned to its original size. There was not a lot of chaotic force stored within it. After a few battles, there was not much left. Back in the Dark Star world, he was unable to find so many resources to increase his chaotic force. After all, after reaching the 15th layer of the chaotic body, every strand of chaotic force he condensed required several dozen times more energy than before. It was not something that regular heavenly resources could fill. Afterwards, he returned to the Tianyuan family and took back his fleshly core. He then ran around for Siyu, even crossing the distant cosmos. He was unable to find the time to replenish his chaotic force. Chapter 2990. Fortunately, I came across Gusta's fleshly core in the depths of the desolate plain, or increasing my chaotic force really wouldn't have been easy, Jianshin thought. Although the Tianyuan clan's wealth was enough for him to raise his chaotic Niden to the limit of the 15th layer after inheriting some of the wealth from the Peak clans on the Cloud Plain, the Tianyuan clan's wealth was not enough to support him. However, the Tianyuan family would definitely have to pay a heavy price if that happened, which would directly delay the development of the entire clan. However, it was different with Gusta's fleshly core. Not only did he no longer need to worry about energy, but even if he broke through to the 16th or 17th layer, the energy within the fleshly core would be enough to support him. After all, this was the energy of a 9th heavenly layer Grand Prime. It was more than enough to support his current chaotic body. Jianshin sat there without moving at all. He seemed like a statue, like an old monk meditating. Only the fleshly core in his hand constantly emitted extremely pure energy, which was absorbed by Jianshin like a whale. The chaotic Niden in his Dantian immediately began to swell at a visible rate. The chaotic force inside became even more abundant. There was no alternation between the sun and moon on this nameless planet, nor was there any winter. The 4 seasons were the same, so it was basically impossible to sense the flow of time there. Jianshin became completely submerged in cultivation. He forgot about time, forgot about himself, and lost all sense of the outside world. This was because this place was extremely complete. He did not need to remain vigilant towards the outside world, like before when he cultivated here. Jianshin had no idea how much time had passed as he cultivated. The chaotic Niden in his Dantian had already expanded to half its size from when it was at its peak. The chaotic force within it was extremely abundant. It was also at this moment that Jianshin, who was completely submerged in cultivation, seemed to be drawn in by a mysterious power. He could not help but wake up. As soon as he opened his eyes, a beggar-like old man with disheveled hair and a body covered in mud sat before him. A pair of eyes that seemed as deep as the vast starry sky stared at him without blinking. "Greetings, Senior Feng." Jianshin stowed Gusta's fleshly core away and immediately clasped his fist at the old man. Senior Feng said nothing. Instead, he opened his hand, and Gusta's fleshly core that Jianshin had just stowed away in his space ring immediately appeared in his hand. Senior Feng stared at the fleshly core in his hand, and his gaze became mixed for a moment. He murmured with a hoarse voice, "Gusta, after so many years, I can still see traces of you." Senior Feng's emotions seemed to ripple slightly. He stared at Gusta's fleshly core for a while before looking at Jianshin. He said with a hoarse voice, Where did you find Gusta's fleshly core? In the depths of the desolate plain. Jianqin immediately told Senior Feng everything he had gone through in the depths of the desolate plain without holding anything back. He did not even hide the fact that the Blood-Tier Grand Exalt had personally come. However, when he thought about the Blood-Tier Grand Exalt and the indescribable pressure from the Blood-Tier Grand Exalt, he could not help but shiver. He had come into contact with more than one Grand Exalt. Back in the Tsang Poseidon Palace, he had even fused with a sliver of the Samsaric Immortal Exalt soul. However, the Samsaric Immortal Exalt had purposefully concealed his presence, so the pressure he felt when he faced the Samsaric Immortal Exalt was nowhere near as powerful as the Blood-Tier Grand Exalts. Even though he had faced a clone of the Blood-Tier Grand Exalt back then, the Blood-Tier Grand Exalt's clone was still present. "Stop your thoughts!" Suddenly, Senior Feng called out. His voice boomed like thunder, causing Jianqin's head to ring. His soul pulsed violently, and all his thoughts were interrupted. Senior Feng said sternly, "Remember, when you mention the name of a Grand Exalt, you cannot think about it, or the Grand Exalt will sense it. If you are weak and barely come into contact with the ways of the world, the Grand Exalt might not sense it. However, your cultivation has already reached the primordial realm, so you have come into contact with the ways of the world rather deeply. Once you mention the name of a Grand Exalt and think about the Grand Exalt, you will resonate with the ways of the world and be sensed by the Grand Exalt. You cannot mention the name of a Grand Exalt lightly, but once you mention it, you have to conceal yourself and sever all connections." "Yes, Senior Feng." "I understand." Jianqin accepted humbly. At the same time, he became even more fearful of people at this level of cultivation. "Senior Feng, is Grand Exalt's cultivation above Grand Prime?" Jianqin asked. He had obtained an answer to a similar question from the Sword Spirits in the past. Back then, the Sword Spirits had said that Grand Exalts were also Grand Primes. But afterwards, as his strength rapidly increased, he stood at a higher and higher position, and he came into contact with more and more domains. Jianqin could not help but begin to doubt himself. He doubted whether Grand Exalts had actually surpassed the level of Grand Primes and reached an even higher level. This was because he had come into contact with Grand Exalts, sovereigns of the world who had become the ways of the world, and he had also come into contact with 9th Heavenly Layer Grand Primes. However, Jianqin always felt like the difference between the two were experts who belonged to completely different domains. Jianqin's question made Senior Feng fall silent for a very long time. Only after quite a while did Senior Feng suck in a deep breath. He stared at Jianqin with a strange light in his eyes and said, "Actually, you should ask the Sword Spirits of the Twin Swords about this. After all, they once followed Grand Exalts, so they obviously have the right to speak." Jianqin was immediately shocked when Senior Feng mentioned the existence of the Sword Spirits. His expression immediately changed rapidly. As if Senior Feng could see Jianqin's nervousness, he could not help but chuckle. He said, "You don't need to be nervous. There's no unresolvable grievance between us, spirit sages, and the Immortals world. Although we have engaged in great battles with the Immortals world in the past, compared to the losses that the various organizations of the Saints world have inflicted on us, the battles between us and the Immortals world are just small skirmishes. We can even let go of our grievances with the Saints world, let alone the Immortals world. Of course, that's only limited to us spirit sages. We can let go of our grievances, but that doesn't mean the other organizations in the Saints world can do the same. As a result, you still need to hide carefully before outsiders," Senior Feng said earnestly. Senior Feng said earnestly. His tone was peaceful and very kind. "Senior Feng, can all 9th Heavenly Layer Grand Primes discover the existence of the Sword Spirits?" Jianqin's heart tightened as he asked the question that worried him the most. Chapter 2991. Different. "Senior, are you about to break through and become a sovereign of the world?" Jianqin's heart shuddered as his heart churned. Senior Feng shook his head. As if he was unwilling to talk about this, he changed the topic. I'd better tell you about the differences between Grand Exalts and Grand Primes. Shen Jian just happens to have reached the primordial realm as well, so he has the right to understand these matters. Senior Feng paused and sorted out his thoughts. In the long past, there was no such thing as godhood and primordial realm in the saints' world. Instead, it was measured by the layers of laws. Cultivators who had just comprehended the laws to reach godhood had the first layer of laws, and as their comprehension of the ways of the world rapidly deepened, the layers of laws would follow suit until they reached the apex, the 100th layer. The 100th layer of laws is the limit of ways, and that's the height that Grand Exalts stand at. If you haven't reached the 100th layer of laws, even if you're at the 99th layer, you're still at the 9th heavenly layer. Although the difference between the 99th layer and the 100th layer seems like a single step, this single step represents the difference between grasping 99 layers of laws and truly grasping a single law. There's a qualitative difference. It's exactly because of this qualitative difference that there's a huge difference in strength between Grand Primes and Grand Exalts. As for whether Grand Exalts stand above Grand Primes, the old man had asked the Grand Exalt of ancient paths in the past. When he reached there, Senior Feng could not help but think of the conversation he had with the Grand Exalt of ancient paths in the past. His eyes could not help but darken slightly. In the past, the Grand Exalt of ancient paths seemed to have some reservations about this matter. In the end, he told me that the height that Grand Exalts stood at was actually still at the level of Grand Primes. The only difference was that they had reached the end of a path of ways. Grand Exalt is not actually a cultivation level. Instead, it's a title. It's a title that has comprehended the laws to the limit, where they've basically become the laws themselves and can interfere with the operation of the laws. Senior Feng let out a long sigh when he reached there. That may be the case, but Old Man is someone who has clashed with a Grand Exalt after all. If there's anyone who understands Grand Exalt's power the most among Grand Primes, it's definitely the Old Man. Senior Fangs was filled with fear. Too old. Too. The Grand Exalt is actually so powerful. Jianchen was greatly shocked. He gained an even deeper understanding of people like that. Jianchen, with your talent that's no less than Xinjian's, you actually chose to cultivate the chaotic body instead of the core cultivation method of the sword sect of Violet Heavens. Sigh. What a pity. What a pity. Senior Feng saw through Jianchen's cultivation method with a single glance. He immediately felt pity. When you cultivated the chaotic body, did you know that no one who cultivates the chaotic body can reach Grand Prime in either the immortal's world or the saint's world? Of course, I understand. However, I don't regret cultivating the chaotic body, Jianchen replied. Whatever. Since this is the path you've chosen, there's no need for the old man to say anything more. However, although your cultivation won't reach Grand Prime, your comprehension won't be affected. It's just that when you become a Grand Prime in the future, your opponents will naturally be at the same level as you. At that time, they'll be far more powerful than you. Your comprehension will keep up, but your cultivation won't. You'll only end up as the weakest among the same level of cultivation. In the future, even if your comprehension of laws reaches the limit of 100 and you become a sovereign of the world, you'll probably only be one of the weakest. The Wind Venerable shook his head and sighed as if he felt that Jianchen's future accomplishments were not worth it. However, there are pros and cons. Although you won't be able to reach Grand Prime, you'll be able to live longer. As long as you don't die to powerful enemies, you'll live even longer than Grand Exalts. Jianchen's heart skipped a beat as if he had discovered a new continent. He was surprised. Senior Feng, do Grand Exalts have lifespans as well? No. The Wind Venerable shook his head as if he was unwilling to talk about it. He looked at Xinjian. Xinjian, how have you been recently? However, as a clansman of the Sword of Stars, you haven't taken the wrong path by focusing on the laws of the sword. It's just that your bloodline is too thin, so the abilities of your bloodline haven't fully emerged. The supreme treasure of our spirit sages, the blood of the sacred spirit, can resolve the problem of your bloodline. It's just a pity that the blood of the sacred spirit has already ended up in the hands of those two bastards. Otherwise, with the assistance of the blood of the sacred spirit and the complete awakening of your bloodline, not only will your strength increase drastically, you'll obtain the various abilities of the Sword of Stars, but your potential will also increase. Don't worry, Senior Feng. Even without the bloodline of the Sword of Stars, I'm confident that I won't be any weaker than any of the prodigies of the Sword of Stars, Xin Jian said confidently. He was extremely indifferent towards the problem of his bloodline. The Wind Venerable nodded in relief. It's obviously good that you're confident. As for the blood of the sacred spirit, the old man will take it back sooner or later. Those two scoundrels have done many evil deeds over the years. Aside from the blood of the Holy Spirit, there are many treasures that have been passed down from our ancestors in the Spirit Immortal clan that have fallen into their hands. The Flying Feather clan's Cosmic Reversal Umbrella and the Wood Spirit clan's Scepter of Life are both god artifacts that Grand Exalts used. They all left with the clansmen of the Flying Feather and Wood Spirit clans when the two clans split up. But now, both of them have ended up in the hands of those two bastards. Senior Feng let out a long sigh and said, I think that the Flying Feather race and the Wood Spirit race's clansmen are probably dead. Jianqin was alarmed. He immediately asked, Senior, is the Scepter of Life one of the two god artifacts that the Grand Exalt of the Wood Spirit clan used in the past? Correct. The Grand Exalt of the Wood Spirit clan had two god artifacts back then, which were the Scepter of Life and the Source of Life. One of them was used for attack, while the other was used for defense. We've already confirmed that the Scepter of Life has ended up in the hands of those two bastards. But even if they possess the Scepter of Life, they won't be able to use it, because the scepter can only be used by those who have comprehended the laws of life. The only thing that the old man is worried about right now is that the two bastards have obtained the other god artifact of the Grand Exalt of the Wood Spirit clan, the Source of Life. Only people who have comprehended the laws of life can use the Scepter of Life, so there are many restrictions. However, the Source of Life can be used by everyone because the Source of Life is a healing god artifact, condensed from the Grand Exalt of the Wood Spirit clan using his extreme comprehension of the laws of life and his own source of life. It contains endless life force. Chapter 2992. Senior Feng only stayed for 6 hours before leaving. Every time he was awake, he would only be awake for a few short hours. After Senior Feng left, Jianqin did not immediately cultivate. He sat where he was and could not help but think of the Myriad Bone Guild. Putting aside the fact that the Myriad Bone Guild had schemed against Siyu, they were even targeting him right now, trying to make him die at the hands of Senior Feng, who had lost his mind. If he had not coincidentally met Xinjian here, and if Shanjian had not coincidentally grasped a method to restrain Senior Feng, he really might have been consigned to eternal damnation on this trip. Myriad Bone Guild. Jianqin muttered as a sharp light flashed through his eyes. However, he also understood that he could only temporarily hide the Myriad Bone Guild's scheme against him from the bottom of his heart. This was because the Myriad Bone Guild was just too powerful. In the eyes of the current Jianqin, he was an unshakable colossus, an existence that he could only look up to. Jianqin, I'm afraid you won't have the chance to take revenge for the Myriad Bone Guild, because Senior Feng will definitely not let them go. Once Senior Feng solves his own problem, the first thing he will do will be to destroy the Myriad Bone Guild. Senior Feng hates the Myriad Bone Guild even more than you. So if you want revenge, I'm afraid it won't be your turn. Xinjian also knew that the Myriad Bone Guild had schemed against Jianqin. Seeing Jianqin's murderous appearance, he could not help but make fun of him. Jianqin let out a long breath and slowly calmed himself down. He did not think about the Myriad Bone Guild and instead focused on Siyu. On Siyu's body, the blood-red cocoon formed by the Saint Blood Dao Fruit's energy gradually changed color. Through the cocoon, it was possible to roughly see Siyu lying silently inside. As the power of the saint blood Tao fruit weakened, Genshin's spiritual sense was able to penetrate inside. He cautiously examined Siyu's injuries and finally revealed a relieved smile. Under his observation, Siyu's condition was improving. Not only did the bloodline power within the fruit increase Siyu's own bloodline power, but it also assisted Siyu's bloodline power, launching a counterattack against the bloodline power of the Dark Star Grand Exalt. This kind of counterattack could be seen as a kind of devouring. Even though the bloodline power of the Dark Star Grand Exalt was powerful, it did not have any support in the end. On the other hand, Siyu's bloodline power was like a huge source of energy under the support of the Saint Blood Tao fruit. With the constant support of the fruit, he immediately turned the tables and gained the upper hand. At the same time as a portion of the Dark Star Grand Exalt's bloodline power was devoured, Siyu's bloodline power became even more powerful. As for Siyu's body that had already been transformed by the Dark Star Grand Exalt, it slowly recovered under the cleansing of the Saint Blood Tao fruit and his own bloodline power. The scales of victory had completely tipped toward Siyu. Judging from the current situation, it won't be long before Sacred Feather recovers, Lin Yun said. Genshin was completely relieved now. Afterwards, he continued to absorb Gusta's fleshly core to replenish his chaotic force. Several late Divine King cultivators gathered together in a high-grade divine crystal mine controlled by the Tianyuan family in the southern region of the Cloud Plain. They were all cautious as they whispered to each other. The Divine King all belonged to the Tianyuan family. They had been specially sent here by the Tianyuan family to protect the high-grade divine crystal mine. There are still 7 days before the annual Divine Crystals Submission Day. By then, all the divine crystals that we have mined in this mineral vein for a year will be handed over to the clan. Have you made the arrangements on Dulong's side? Don't worry, everything's been arranged. In 2 days, the Dulong will gather a few people and pretend to attack our mine. Then we'll all chase after them. As long as we leave, the mine will no longer have a divine king. Then, the Dulong will use the method we told him to open the formation. He'll be able to sneak in without anyone noticing. We've already dug up all the low-grade and mid-grade divine crystals on the outskirts of the mine. As a result, basically all the divine crystals we've mined this year are high-grade divine crystals. It's equivalent to a decade of mining in the past. If we succeed this time, we'll get at least 1 million high-grade divine crystals if we ignore the dividends from the higher-ups. After this happens, even if Shiyu wants to blame us, we can just say that we've fallen into the enemy's trap. Also, with the higher-ups speaking up for us, even if Shiyu is the vice-patriarch of the Tianyuan family, she won't be able to do anything to us. When they reach there, the Divine King cultivators could not help but laugh sinisterly, as if their scheme had succeeded. Their eyes all shone. They had already begun to view the mine that belonged to the Tianyuan family as a treasure trove that could enrich their pockets. Right at this moment, the array formation not far away suddenly emitted a slight fluctuation. Who is it? The expressions of the Divine King changed. They called out and chased after someone. An early overgod concealed his presence as much as he could as he flew away from the divine crystal mine as quickly as he could. The divine crystal mine had already been cast down with layers of formations. However, the early overgod only needed to form a seal, and all the formations before him opened up, allowing him to pass through with ease. It's the people from the Ministry of Supervision. Oh no, kill him! The expressions of the Divine King cultivators immediately changed when they saw the overgod's hand seals. They immediately pursued him. At the same time, they mobilized the guards and directly ordered his death. Immediately, all the guards of the mine rushed over from various places surrounding the overgod. I am an inspector of the Tianyuan family's Ministry of Supervision. Everyone move aside. The early overgod raised his medallion high into the air. Humph, how bold of you. Do you think you can impersonate an inspector so recklessly just because you've stolen an inspector's medallion? Since you've killed an inspector of our Tianyuan family, don't even think about leaving alive today. The Divine King cultivators all called out from behind. They were all panicking as they began to pursue desperately. However, the divine crystal mine was covered in layers of formations. Every single formation was like a wall that blocked their path. Although they had the authority to open the formations, their authority was clearly not as great as the people from the Ministry of Supervision. As a result, they opened the formations a little slower than the people from the Ministry of Supervision. It was exactly because of the obstructions of the formations that the Divine King cultivators found it extremely difficult to kill an overgod. These damned formations. When we get back, we have to suggest to the seniors that she retract the authority she gave the Ministry of Supervision. Otherwise, it'll be far too disadvantageous for us. Chapter 2993. Now that they were out of the range of the mine, the Divine King was no longer obstructed by the formation. As a result, the speed of the pursuing Divine Kings immediately skyrocketed. Even though the inspector had already used various techniques to flee, he was only an early overgod. The difference in strength between him and the late Divine King was just too great. As a result, in just a few seconds, the God Kings who watched over the divine crystal mine had surrounded the inspector. "What are you doing?" "I am an envoy of the Tianyuan family. I directly answer to the patriarch and vice-patriarch of the Tianyuan clan. As a member of the Tianyuan family, are you bold enough to kill an envoy?" Seeing that there was no hope of escaping, the supervisor raised the token in his hand and roared, a trace of despair in his eyes. "Ha! Ha! Ha! You're a supervisor, right? But if you dare to interfere with our work, even if you are a supervisor, only death awaits you. Look at you, supervisor envoy. Why did you have to poke your nose into other people's business instead of enjoying yourself outside? You're really courting death. This is what they mean by there's a path to heaven, but you don't want to take it. Ha 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 ha. Supervisor, this day next year will be the anniversary of your death. Inspector, you were hiding in the dark just now. You must have secretly recorded the memory crystal, right? Hand over the memory crystal obediently. The Divine King, guarding the Divine Essence mine, sneered and didn't care about the other party's identity as a supervisor at all. So what if he was a supervisor? Over the years, quite a few inspectors had died indirectly at their hands. Let's not waste any more time. Let's get rid of him as soon as possible so as to avoid unnecessary trouble. One of the Divine Kings growled. With that, he wielded a high-grade holy artifact. He unleashed a powerful streak of light towards the invigilator. The envoy's face was filled with despair. An early overgod versus a late divine king. The difference in strength was so great that he could not put up any resistance at all. "Io, what's going on today? Why are we fighting with each other?" However, at this moment, a seductive voice rang out. A woman in alluring attire suddenly appeared there. With a gentle wave of her hand, the light from the Divine King shattered. May, Guardian May. The expressions of the God Kings immediately changed when they saw the woman, and their hearts sank. TSK. The juniors nowadays really are bolder than the last. They're even bold enough to kill the inspectors of the Tianyuan clan. The rules of the Tianyuan clan are extremely strict. Even us infinite primes don't dare to kill inspectors so casually, said a middle-aged man with a smile. Protector May's tone was gentle as she chuckled. It was unknown whether she was laughing at the Divine King's audacity or praising their courage. Protector May, this person isn't an envoy at all. He's an outsider in disguise. I hope Protector May can allow us to kill him. Afterwards, CERN will explain everything to Protector May. One of the Divine Kings gritted his teeth and said, a God King said through gritted teeth. With that, he struck out again, directly making his way around Protector May and killing the inspector of the Tianyuan clan with his full strength. Hee, you brats, Are you still unwilling to give up? The clan will naturally decide whether this person is an envoy or not. It's not up to you to kill him. As for Protectorin, he's just an external protector of the Tianyuan family. Since, when does he need to explain the matters of the clan? Protector May giggled. With a wave of her hand, the belt around her waist immediately flew out, becoming several hundred meters long in a single instance. It wrapped around the Divine King. Before a primordial realm expert, the late Divine King were unable to put up any resistance at all. They were all firmly trapped. Thank you for saving us, Protector May. The envoy bowed towards Protector May gratefully after escaping death. Protector May glanced at him indifferently and said, "Little guy, you're lucky that I just happened to return from a business trip. Otherwise, you wouldn't have been able to keep your life." Afterwards, Protector May murmured to herself, "That girl, Shiyu, has been doing more and more recently. She's become tougher and tougher as well. Even Protector Shui has been forcefully given a mission by her. It looks like she's up to something big. It's just that the Patriarch has yet to return, and Senior Su is aloof, not interfering with the matters of the Tianyuan family at all. Just where does that girl get her confidence from?" Within a merchant group that specialized in the trade of various heavenly resources in the former imperial capital of the Blood Sun Empire. "Vice President, I've represented the Tianyuan family, this time to purchase heavenly resources worth almost 1 billion supreme, grade, divine crystals from your merchant group. Moreover, our superiors have already said that we want 80% of this purchase. You have to deal with this properly. If our superiors are satisfied with this, our Tianyuan family will still come to your merchant group for similar purchases in the future. After all, our Tianyuan family is quite large right now. We have many people, and our daily expenses are extremely shocking. This batch of heavenly resources will be gone very soon." A divine king of the Tianyuan family smiled mysteriously within the merchant group as he discussed with the vice president of the merchant group. Don't worry. Leave this to our merchant group. We'll definitely satisfy our superiors. Oh, it just so happens that the Tianyuan family needs these heavenly resources. Due to the huge demand recently, the price has skyrocketed by more than 10 times. The vice president of the merchant group smiled sinisterly. After a round of discussion, both parties left the sealed parlor with satisfied smiles. After they left, a manservant dressed up as a servant walked in from outside. He began to clean up the parlor. After confirming that there was no one around, the manservant went to a corner of the parlor and used a secret technique to open a hidden formation. He took out a memory crystal from it. Tianyuan family. Within the medium-grade divine artifact, the Water Cloud Hall, Shiyu sat on the main seat with a frosty expression. Several upper echelons of the Department of Supervision stood below her. Vice Patriarch, with the intervention of the protectors and the investment of a large number of spatial formation disks, our efficiency at gathering evidence has increased drastically. We basically have enough evidence right now. The only drawback is that the evidence we've gathered is basically all evidence against divine kings. As for the protectors behind them, we don't have any evidence at all. The upper echelons of the Department of Supervision reported. She looked at the 1,000 memory crystals on the table before her and waved her hand emotionlessly. She said, "You've done well. You're all dismissed. I'll make arrangements for the rest." The upper echelons of the Department of Supervision all left. However, soon after they left, 6 infinite primes entered the Water Cloud Hall with Protector Shui in the lead. To no surprise, Protector May was one of them. Take a guess. Who do you think I came across on my way back? Protector May giggled as soon as she entered the Water Cloud Hall. Afterwards, she let out the Divine King who guarded the high-grade divine crystal mine and continued, "If I've seen correctly, these people should be from the Tianyuan family as well. But they actually worked together and openly hunted down the people of the Department of Supervision. If it weren't for the fact that I happened to come across them, the people of the Department of Supervision would have died to their hands long ago." Sigh. These people really are getting more and more lawless. Shiyu's face immediately paled when she heard that. It's a misunderstanding, a misunderstanding. It's all a misunderstanding. We thought that the supervisor was a fake. After all, many of the supervisors of the clan have gone missing. We were worried that an outsider would steal the supervisor's medallion and do something detrimental to the clan, which was why we captured him. We were prepared to hand him over to the clan, but we never thought Protector May would suddenly appear. Take them away! Shiyu snorted coldly and directly ordered people to take the divine king away. Afterwards, she stared at the infinite primes before her cautiously and asked, Protectors, may I ask how the matter went? Fortunately, we've succeeded. All the evidence is in these memory crystals. Protector Shui said indifferently. Protector Shui said indifferently. He immediately tossed out several dozen memory crystals and mused. However, this evidence is far from enough to deal with those protectors. Some evidence can actually be forged. If they refuse to admit it, there's nothing we can do to them. Chapter 2994. Thank you for your warning, protectors. I'll make the arrangements for the rest. Shiyu clasped her fist at the protectors. She was filled with confidence, as if she had everything planned out. The protectors left, and immediately, only Shiyu remained in the large discussion hall. Shiyu sat on the main seat with her eyes closed as she sank into her thoughts. She held a few memory crystals in her hand, rubbing them subconsciously. After the time it took for a stick of incense to burn, she slowly opened her eyes. There was a hint of coldness in her beautiful eyes. Men inform all the protectors of the family to gather in the main hall. We're holding a family meeting. Shiyu's orders were passed down through the servants, reaching all the protectors as quickly as possible. Before long, all the primordial realm protectors of the Tianyuan family gathered in the main hall of the Watercloud Hall. There were over 30 of them. Most of the protectors were early or mid-infinite primes. There were not many late infinite primes. The strongest among them was Protector N, a 9th heavenly layer infinite prime. Shiyu, may I ask why you've gathered all of us here? Protector N was the first to speak. His voice was rather impatient, as if he did not take Shiyu, the vice-patriarch, seriously at all. Shiyu, although you're the vice-patriarch of the Tianyuan family and possess great authority, we're still primordial realm experts. Let alone the Tianyuan family, but we're primordial realm experts after all. Even on the entire cloud plane, we possess quite the status. If you summon us without any urgent matters, you'll be disrespecting us primordial realm experts, said another person. He was called Protector Chin, and he was a 7th heavenly layer infinite prime. Shiyu smiled mysteriously when she heard Protector Chen's words. She said, why would Protector Chen say that? When Protector Chen joined our Tianyuan family, you understood the rules of the clan clearly. The 4th rule of the clan was that those who joined our Tianyuan family had to obey the orders of the clan and serve the clan. They were not allowed to complain at all. You can't have forgotten such a simple rule so quickly, right? Of course, I wouldn't dare to forget this rule. I have no objections to this rule, and am naturally willing to listen to the clan's orders. However, Patriarch Genshin is not in the clan right now. In my opinion, apart from Patriarch Genshin and Senior Su, there's no one else who has the right to order us around, Protector Chen said righteously. In reality, many of the protectors did not recognize Pitiful You because she was just too weak. As primordial realm experts, they naturally could not tolerate a mere over-god standing above them. Even though Shiyu was the princess of the Shi dynasty, her identity was not enough to deter primordial realm experts in the southern region at all. The Shi dynasty was an eternal organization with chaotic primes at most, while the patriarch of the Tianyuan clan, Jianqin, had the support of the martial Soul Mountain, which was equivalent to an eternal organization. As a result, the protectors could obey everything Jianqin said, but they would always act haughtily before Shiyu. That's not true, since Jianqin has appointed me as the vice-patriarch and has given me all the authority. I can obviously represent the entire clan. Shi Yu continued, Actually, there's no need for me to explain this to you. It's just like what Patriarch Jianqin said to me that day. Our Tianyuan family has spent a lot of money to hire you because the clan needs your strength to protect the interests of the clan, not to hire a bunch of useless people who only know how to enjoy themselves with a generous salary. The faces of many primordial realm protectors in the main hall darkened. They were extremely sunken. Let's get back to the main topic. I haven't gathered you here today to explain this to you. Instead, I have something important to announce. Shi Yu straightened her face and said sternly, In the past few years, extremely serious problems have been discovered in the various divine crystal mines, medicinal gardens, and transactions under the patriarch of the Tianyuan clan. Only after hearing about the secret investigations of our Tianyuan family over the years did we discover that there is a huge amount of corruption within the various branches of management. Extremely serious corruption and embezzlement have occurred, seriously harming the interests of the family. What's even more terrifying is that there are many protectors behind this matter. Protectors? How do you think we should deal with this matter? Naturally, we should deal with it according to the rules of the clan, Protector Shui immediately said as soon as Shi Yu finished speaking. Shi Yu, you can't say that carelessly. The protectors of the Tianyuan family are all primordial realm experts. How can people like them lower themselves to do something so despicable for some resources that they have no use for? Said Protector, and just some resources? According to incomplete statistics, our Tianyuan family has lost over 10 billion supreme, grade, divine crystals at the very least. May I ask, Protector, and if all your wealth is worth that much? Shi Yu sneered. Protector, and was immediately speechless, although he was a 9th heavenly layer infinite prime. Since he had chosen to become a protector of the Tianyuan family, it meant that he was not an independent cultivator with a great background and was not wealthy. 10 billion supreme, grade, divine crystals was truly an unreachable number to him. Shi Yu, do you have any evidence? If you don't speak nonsense. Primordial realm experts cannot be insulted. A protector called out from the crowd. Shi Yu sneered. If it were before Jianqin's return, she really would not have had the confidence to touch these protectors. But now, with a wave of her hand, many memory crystals immediately flew out. You want evidence, so I'll give you evidence. You can take a look at these memory crystals. You might even be able to see your own reflection in them. With that, the primordial realm protectors immediately began to check the memory crystals. The expressions of many people changed rapidly. If it's fake, the contents are all fake. Someone's trying to frame us. There are far too many ways to fake these things in the world. These memory crystals can't prove anything. Many primordial realm experts bellowed out furiously and crushed the memory crystals. As for Protectorin, he waved his hand and violent energy swept out, causing large swathes of memory crystals to explode. Shi Yu remained composed as she sat on the main seat. She said, All right, I should remind you that there are copies of all the contents in the memory crystals, so it doesn't matter even if they're destroyed. As for whether they're real or fake, we'll know after some investigation. Come, bring them over. The divine king who had been captured by Protector May in the end were all tied up and brought over. Clearly, they had been tortured, so they were all haggard. Their eyes were hollow as if they had lost their souls. Protector Anne's expression became rather ugly when he saw their condition. With his insight, he could tell with a single glance that the divine king had clearly been tortured by something that targeted their souls. Under these conditions, their minds were completely unguarded. They would basically answer whatever was asked, unable to lie at all. However, when he thought about his own strength and the primordial realm experts on his side, Protector and immediately calmed down. He was not alone. Instead, he was part of a huge group of people. Basically half of all the primordial realm protectors in the Tianyuan family were on his side. Speak. Who's behind this? Tell me everything you know. She looked at the divine king. It's Protectorin. The Divine King did not hide anything at all. They told her everything they knew about the betrayal of the Tianyuan family, not missing a single detail. Their target was Protector and... How dare you? Protector and is the greatest protector of the Tianyuan family. How can he be blasphemed by ants like you? You deserve to die. A fifth heavenly layer infinite prime immediately bellowed out and slammed his hand towards the Divine King. He wanted to silence them. However, at this moment, a powerful energy that caused even Protector Anne's expression to change suddenly erupted from the water cloud hall. It formed a suppressive force that mercilessly descended on the Protector who had struck out. The Protector immediately felt his body sink. Before the suppressive force, he was unable to resist at all. His knees directly gave out, and he knelt on the ground. Afterwards, the power of the divine hall descended, completely restraining him. He was unable to move at all. The artifact spirit. It's the artifact spirit. The sudden changes caused the expressions of Protector and the others to change drastically. Disbelief filled their faces. Didn't the artifact spirit of the water cloud hall never show itself? Why was it interfering with such trivial matters today? Oh no, the artifact spirit of the water cloud hall has begun to listen to Shiyu's orders. Protector and immediately understood what was going on when he saw how composed Shiyu was. He understood just how powerful the medium-quality god artifact of the water cloud hall was. It was impossible for anyone below chaotic prime to fend off such power here. With a single movement, Protector and immediately charged out of the water cloud hall. Many other protectors moved at the same time. All of them understood that as long as they remained in the water cloud hall, they were trapped. They could not fight back at all. Only after leaving the water cloud hall would they become powerful primordial realm experts. Chapter 2995. The expressions of all the protectors changed drastically when they sensed the power of the divine hall. The primordial realm experts, suppressed by the water cloud hall, all bellowed out furiously and resisted as hard as they could. They all understood that once they were suppressed, they would be reduced to meat on the chopping block. They would be at the mercy of the divine hall. As a result, none of them were willing to give up. Immediately, the powers of over a dozen primordial realm experts erupted in the water cloud hall, forming a tremendous storm of energy in an attempt to fend off the artifact spirit of the divine hall. However, even though there were many of them, it was nowhere near enough before a medium-quality god artifact. All of their attacks, defenses, and methods of resistance were as fragile as paper before the water cloud hall. The power of the water cloud hall was unstoppable, completely restraining the primordial realm protectors. Shiyu, what's the meaning of this? Shiyu, we're mighty primordial realm experts. Even in peak organizations we can become elders. How can you treat us like this? How dare you? How dare you? This is the greatest insult to us as primordial realm experts. Release us. If the Tianyuan family treats us like this, then it's fine if the old man doesn't want to be a protector anymore. At that moment, all the primordial realm protectors who had been suppressed by the water cloud hall roared out furiously. However, while they seemed furious on the surface, their hearts sank. They sensed that something bad was about to happen. Strange. Why has the artifact spirit of the water cloud hall suddenly begun to listen to Shiyu's orders? On the other side, Protector Mei and the others were all shocked as well. They were all astounded by Shiyu's ability to command the artifact spirit of the water cloud hall. In the past, Shiyu was only an overgod. In the eyes of many primordial realm experts, that was not enough to deter them at all. Coupled with the fact that the true leader of the Tianyuan family, Jianqin, had not been present for a long time, the protectors still did not take her seriously, even though she had taken on the mantle of a vice-patriarch. However, now that Shiyu had demonstrated her ability to command the artifact spirit of the water cloud hall before all the primordial realm protectors, her status in the hearts of the primordial realm protectors increased drastically. This was because the significance of the Water Cloud Hall being commanded and the Water Cloud Hall being commanded by no one were completely different. If no one commanded the Water Cloud Hall, it would only be a sturdy nest that could not move. However, if someone could command the Water Cloud Hall, the medium-quality god artifact would immediately become a weapon of attack and defense. It could be moved as they wished. Protectors, I can only trouble you for now. Before the matter is completely investigated, you probably won't be able to leave the Water Cloud Hall. Shiyu stared at the immobilized infinite primes under the suppression of the divine hall calmly as her heart heaved. She struggled to remain as calm as she did on the surface. As a matter of fact, her heart could not help but beat heavily. Everything that was happening right now could only be described as extremely exciting to her as an overgod. This was because she had never experienced the feeling of being able to imprison so many great primordial realm experts with a single thought, where their lives were in her hands. This feeling of wielding absolute power not only excited her, but also intoxicated and captivated her. Protector Lin, I'll have to trouble you to cooperate with the investigation of the clan, said Shiyu. With that, an extremely beautiful orchid appeared behind her. Immediately, many roots extended from it, wrapping around Protector Lin, who was only a second heavenly layer infinite prime. This is the orchid that Patriarch Jianqin has been cultivating. Protector Lin was one of the few female protectors in the Tianyuan family. She immediately recognized the immortal devouring orchid that only existed in legends in the Tianyuan family. She immediately paled in fright. The immortal devouring orchid was no longer a secret. Basically, all the important members of the Tianyuan family knew about its existence. They also knew that Patriarch Jianqin had once fed it with the corpses of a large number of primordial realm experts. There were not only infinite primes, but there were also a few chaotic primes and even grand primes. Don't come over. Don't come over. Don't come over. Release me. Protector Lin shrieked in fright. This was the infamous immortal devouring orchid that had devoured the corpses of a large number of primordial realm experts in the Tianyuan family. Now that the immortal devouring orchid's roots had wrapped around her, Protector Lin subconsciously imagined the terrifying scene of the immortal devouring orchid devouring primordial realm experts. At that moment, her heart trembled as she became frightened out of her wits. Vice Patriarch, I'll tell you everything I know. Please make the immortal devouring orchid leave my body. Make it stay away from me. Protector Lin shrieked. The Water Cloud Hall remained closed for 3 whole days. 3 days later, the tightly shut doors finally opened. However, only half of the 30 or so protectors who had entered the Water Cloud Hall made it out in the end. Protector and the other protectors seemed to have vanished from the Water Cloud Hall, never to appear before the eyes of the world again. Afterwards, the upper echelon of the Tianyuan family underwent a great change. Many people who were suspected of corruption were arrested. They were either expelled from the Tianyuan family or locked up in the Tianyuan family's prison. Shiyu oversaw everything. This matter immediately increased Shiyu's prestige in the Tianyuan family as a vice patriarch. Protector and the others have all been locked up in the Water Cloud Hall? That's not a bad idea. It saves me the trouble of having to do anything. Right now, only the Water Cloud Hall, a medium-quality god artifact, is suitable for locking up protectors in the Tianyuan family. Within a small courtyard enveloped by a powerful formation in the depths of the Tianyuan family, Su ran slowly open her eyes. She looked in the direction of the Water Cloud Hall and could not help but nod secretly. Nothing that happened in the Tianyuan family could escape her eyes. With her cultivation as a chaotic prime, the senses of her soul were so powerful that they could easily envelop the entire southern region. If she wanted to, there would be no secrets in the entire southern region before her eyes. Nothing that the protectors of the Tianyuan family secretly did could escape her eyes. However, from her height and her experiences in the past few years, she had already become indifferent to worldly matters. As a result, She knew exactly what was going on in the Tianyuan family, but she could not be bothered to care about it, let alone pay any attention to it. The meaning of her existence was more of a deterrent. At the same time, she was a Poseidon. No matter how chaotic the Tianyuan family became, it would always be the Tianyuan family. It would not change its name. The origin of ways really is a power formed after grand exalt passes away. It really is wondrous. After absorbing a portion of the ancient Skywolf's origin of ways, my progress in the past few years can only be described as unbelievable. Chapter 2996. Time passed in the blink of an eye. Genshin, who was completely immersed in cultivation, could not sense the flow of time at all. The only thing he could sense was that the chaotic Niden in his Dantian rapidly became larger as the chaotic force rapidly filled up. After who knew how long, the chaotic Niden in Genshin's Dantian finally reached its limit. It was brimming with chaotic force, unable to hold any more. Genshin slowly opened his eyes. He subconsciously looked at the fleshly core in his hand, and he could not help but smile in satisfaction. Very good. After reaching the peak of the chaotic body at the 15th layer, the energy in Gusta's fleshly core has only decreased by 100th. Fortunately, I benefited from this back on the desolate plane, or it would have been extremely difficult for me to reach the next level. Genshin flipped his hand, and Gusta's fleshly core immediately vanished. It had been stowed away in his space ring. At this moment, a faint rumble seemed to cross a great distance and reach Genshin's ears. Accompanying it were the pulses of energy that belonged to two infinite primes. Genshin was slightly surprised. He subconsciously expanded the senses of his soul, and it immediately enveloped the entire region several million kilometers away. Two powerful energies that belonged to infinite primes collided rapidly in the region, producing deafening booms. The sharp laws of the sword and the brutal laws of slaughter collided time and time again. They clashed extremely violently, causing the space there to tremble violently. If it were not for the powerful formation enveloping the nameless planet, the collision of the two primordial realm laws would have caused the space there to collapse long ago. However, no matter how devastating and violent the ripples of energy were, they were unable to affect Genshin's senses of the 9th heavenly layer infinite prime soul at all. As a result, Genshin's powerful senses of the soul pierced through the battlefield and observed the situation clearly. "See you." Genshin immediately became excited. To no surprise, the two infinite primes engaged in an intense battle were Siyu and Xinjian. He didn't know how long he had been cultivating this time. When he opened his eyes again, Siyu was already full of energy and was in full swing with Xinjian. In the next moment, Genshin's figure suddenly disappeared. Through the laws of space, he appeared outside the battlefield as if he had teleported. The aftermath of the battle between Siyu and Xinjian hit Genshin, causing Genshin's long hair to flutter in the wind and his clothes to flutter. "Greetings, Senior Foam." Genshin's spiritual sense couldn't find Senior Foam, so when he arrived, he discovered that Senior Foam was also here. He immediately cupped his fists and bowed, full of respect. Senior Feng's appearance had not changed at all. His hair was still disheveled, and his clothes were in tatters. He seemed like a beggar. He nodded at Genshin before looking at Xinjian and Siyu again. Genshin did not disturb the two of them. He stood beside Senior Feng and stared at the two of them with all his attention. With his eyesight, he could tell with a single glance that Siyu and Xinjian were both using their full strength. They basically did not hold back at all. They used various secret techniques and god-tier battle skills. It seemed like they were clearly engaged in a battle to the death. If someone who did not know the inside story saw this, they would probably really believe that there was some irreconcilable grievance between the two of them. However, Genshin understood that since Senior Feng, a half-step Grand Exalt, was personally watching over this place, it was impossible for their lives to be in any danger no matter how they fought. "Not bad, not bad." Senior Feng smiled faintly as he praised from time to time. No one knew whether he was praising Shen Jian or Siyu. Jian Qin, who watched the battle between the two of them, became surprised very soon. Although the two of them were both infinite primes, Siyu was a second heavenly layer infinite prime, while Shen Jian was a third heavenly layer infinite prime. However, the outcome of the battle left Jian Qin rather stunned. Siyu, who was only a second heavenly layer infinite prime, was actually able to completely suppress Shen Jian, who was a third heavenly layer infinite prime. Siyu, who was weaker in terms of cultivation, had actually gained the complete upper hand. Siyu is actually so powerful. Looking at his battle prowess, he can take on fourth heavenly layer experts as a second heavenly layer infinite prime. As a matter of fact, some regular fourth heavenly layer infinite primes might not even be Siyu's opponent. Jian Qin was greatly shocked. This was the first time he had witnessed Siyu's strength so clearly. "All right, you can stop," Senior Feng suddenly said. Suddenly, Senior Feng spoke. Every word and action of his could cause the laws of heaven and earth to change. As soon as his words left his mouth, an invisible force separated Sacred Feather and Shen Jian. Siyu and Shen Jian stopped. They both arrived before Senior Feng and clasped their fists. Currently, the two of them were covered in blood. They seemed like they were made of blood, but they were only external wounds. They were not heavy. "Brother, you've finally woken up?" Siyu discovered Jian Qin. His handsome, masculine face immediately became filled with undisguised joy and excitement. Jian Qin nodded with a smile. Siyu's complete recovery and his battle prowess that far exceeded his current level of cultivation delighted Jian Qin. At the same time, he felt like his trip to the Dark Star world had not been a waste. This was because Siyu had successfully turned the calamity of misfortune into a great fortune. Siyu's bloodline is extremely powerful. Shen Jian, you're still not Siyu's opponent right now. However, you don't need to be discouraged because you haven't fully matured yet. Many of your abilities have yet to mature. Once you've fully matured, even if you're not as great as Siyu, the gap between you won't be as great as it is now, said Senior Feng. Senior Feng, are you saying that even after I've fully matured in all aspects, I'm still not as good as Siyu? Shen Jian became rather discouraged. Don't even think about comparing yourself to Siyu. There really aren't many royal clans in the world that can match up to Siyu's bloodline. Even if your bloodline from the Sword of Starry Skies recovers to its peak and reaches the level of the first ancestor of the Sword of Starry Skies, it'll still be slightly inferior to Siyu, let alone the fact that your bloodline is still extremely thin. Shen Jian, you're actually already extremely outstanding. With your talent, it's unprecedented even with the entire Saints world in perspective. Very few people can match up to you. It's just that your starting point is a little weaker. Master Feng paused for a moment and seemed to feel that his words weren't extremely appropriate. So he added, "Actually, it shouldn't be said to be weak. After all, in the vast 6 dimensions, there are only a few races that possess such a formidable bloodline." Shen Jian immediately became rather shocked when he heard Senior Feng, who was basically invincible in his heart, praise Siyu's bloodline so much. He could not help but look at Siyu and ask curiously, "Siyu, what bloodline do you have?" Chapter 2997. Siyu blinked and didn't say anything. However, he was clearly very surprised that Senior Feng was able to identify his bloodline. Shen Jian stared at Siyu in astonishment for a while. From his expression, it seemed that this was the first time he had truly seen Siyu. However, Shen Jian clearly didn't know much about the Tiger Emperor Siyu. Out of curiosity, he immediately asked, "Senior Feng, is the Tiger Emperor Siyu's bloodline really that powerful?" Senior Feng nodded and said, "The Tiger Emperor Siyu's bloodline is indeed very powerful. In the 6 realms, the only ones who can suppress the power of the Tiger Emperor Siyu's bloodline are the successors of the Warring Gods' bloodline. The Warring Gods of the God race are publicly recognized as the strongest bloodline and the strongest inheritance in the 6 realms. Therefore, the Warring Gods are also the indisputable strongest in the 6 realms. No one of the same level is a match for the warring gods. Of course, it can also be said that no one is a match for the warring gods. Below the warring gods is the Tiger Emperor Siyu's bloodline. If the warring gods' bloodline is the first order, then the Tiger Emperor Siyu's bloodline is the second order. However, in the current world, only the warring gods remain in the first order. As for the second order, there are more of them. Back when the demon realm was still in ruins, there were as many as 4 types of second-order bloodlines. 4. Senior Feng, are you saying that apart from the Tiger Emperor Siyu's bloodline, there are 3 other bloodlines that are on par with mine? Siyu asked with a face full of surprise. He had learned a little about the Tiger Emperor Siyu's bloodline from Mo Tianyan. However, it was only a superficial knowledge. He didn't know that apart from the Tiger Emperor Siyu's bloodline, there were 3 other bloodlines that were on par with him. Senior Feng nodded and said, although the demon realm has been in ruins for an unknown period of time, it is still a great world. There are many ancient records about the demon realm that have been passed down from various realms. I, old man, only learned about the 4 bloodlines from these ancient records. Among the 4 bloodlines, apart from the Siyu Tiger Emperor, the other 3 bloodlines are the Purple Gold Black Tortoise, the Eternal Vermilion Bird, and the 9-clawed Golden Dragon. They are in the White Tiger Clan, the Vermilion Bird Clan, the Black Tortoise Clan, and Azure Dragon Clan. The Siyu Tiger Emperor, the Purple Gold Black Tortoise, the Eternal Vermilion Bird, and the 9-clawed Golden Dragon are like the warring gods among the god clans. They are supreme and extremely respected. Senior Feng sighed when he reached there. However, it's a pity that ever since the demon realm shattered, the Siyu Tiger Emperor, the Purple Gold Black Tortoise, the Eternal Vermilion Bird, and the 5-clawed Golden Dragon have never been born again. This is because there are no more rumors about the 4 bloodlines in the ancient records or the realms. It's as if the 4 bloodlines have completely vanished from the world. Senior Feng looked at Siyu with a rather strange gaze. As a result, when Old Man recognized your bloodline, even Old Man felt extremely surprised. He never thought that the Siyu Tiger Emperor that had almost vanished from the legends would actually appear before Old Man. Oh, right. How did you come to the Saint's World? Back then, I came to the Saint's World with my brother. Siyu was rather speechless. Had Senior Feng lost his mind again? Why did he have to ask such a simple question? Senior Feng came to a realization. Oh, you came to the Saint's World with Jianqin? Then, how did you get to the Tianyuan continent? This time, not only was Siyu dumbfounded, but even Jianqin and Xinjian looked at each other. Senior Feng, shouldn't you be leaving? Shen Jian asked carefully. He felt that Senior Feng's time of sobriety was up. He was about to go insane again. Senior Feng glared at Xinjian and unhappily said, impudent, do I need you to tell me when Old Man wants to leave? Don't worry, Old Man is still sober right now. He hasn't lost his mind. Siyu, why don't you tell me how you came to the Tianyuan continent back then? Senior Feng's eyes were filled with deep curiosity. Jianqin could only explain when he saw how serious Senior Feng was. Senior Feng, Siyu was born on the Tianyuan continent. What? Born on the Tianyuan continent? Senior Feng was shocked when he heard that. Disbelief filled his face as he murmured, that shouldn't be the case. That shouldn't be the case. Siyu, the Tiger Emperor of the Demon's World, was actually born in a miniature world below the Saint's World. Even if the Demon's World has shattered, Siyu should have appeared in the Immortal's World. Why did he appear in the Saint's World? Strange, this is truly strange. However, Siyu did not care about where Siyu had appeared. All he could think about right now was that he actually had a clan as well. His heart immediately burned with passion. Senior Feng, I heard from you that there were 4 imperial clans in the Demon's World. Now that the Demon's World has shattered, may I ask how the 4 imperial clans are doing? Just like us spirit sages, the 4 imperial clans of the Demon's World and the remnants of the other clans have all gone to the Immortal's World. However, they're much luckier than us spirit sages. We paid an extremely heavy price to gain a foothold in the saints' world. However, the 4 imperial clans of the demons' world assimilated with an even easier time than us spirit sages. But now they no longer call themselves imperial clans. They have become the sacred beast clan of the immortals' world. They're a terrifying organization that no one can ignore. In particular, the sacred beast king of their clan is extremely powerful. Although he hasn't reached the level of a grand exalt, he's the only terrifying existence that Old Man isn't confident in defeating in the current 6 worlds. Is the sacred beast king even more powerful than the bloodlines of the winged tiger, the purple gold black tortoise, the eternal vermilion bird, and the 9-clawed golden dragon? Is the sacred beast king the ancestral dragon? See, you asked. You actually know about the ancestral dragon as well. A sliver of surprise appeared on Senior Feng's face. Afterwards, he said, after some thought, the sacred beast king isn't the ancestral dragon, but he comes from the Azure Dragon clan. As for whether the sacred beast king's bloodline is stronger than Siyu's, the purple gold black tortoises, the eternal vermilion birds, and the 9-clawed golden dragon's bloodline, that's not easy to compare. As for the ancestral dragon, a sliver of surprise appeared in Senior Feng's eyes. He said, if the ancestral dragon is reborn, then the warring gods will have a worthy opponent. It's just a pity that the ancestral dragon only exists in legends because it has vanished for far, far too long. Chapter 2998. Senior Feng left once again. With his departure, Jianchen, Shenjian, and Siyu returned to where they cultivated. The so-called cultivation grounds were, in fact, just a few caverns that they had casually dug out. The location of the caverns was not far from the heavenly treasures planted on this nameless planet. Although they all had divine palaces that could provide them with a better environment, none of them chose to cultivate in the divine palaces. Firstly, the nameless planet was very safe. There was no need to worry about being disturbed at all. Secondly, it was because cultivating outside gave one a feeling of being closer to nature. This was because even though the nameless planet was in an abandoned state, it really was extraordinary. Not only was it enveloped by an extremely powerful formation, but the laws of the world would often evolve as well. Moreover, there were a few heavenly resources of extremely high grades planted here. Jianchen, this soil is used to nurture innate items, so there's some innate presence in the soil. Ingesting it will be extremely beneficial to cultivation, said Jianchen. And these few droplets of dew were collected from the soul-resurrecting flower. According to Senior Feng, the soul-resurrecting flower is a heavenly resource specially used to strengthen the soul. It's also a natural treasure, so it's extremely rare. However, the dew produced by the soul-resurrecting flower is very different from regular dew because it's condensed from the power of the soul-resurrecting flower itself. It only produces a single droplet every year. Every droplet of dew from the soul-resurrecting flower contains extremely pure power of the soul. If you consume the dew for a long period of time, not only will the power of the soul increase by leaps and bounds, but you'll also be able to further condense the soul and cleanse the negative emotions in your soul. As for these leaves, they're specially used to refine the body. Not only can they strengthen the body and improve the constitution, but they can also increase the rate at which the body absorbs origin energy. Shen Jian took out various precious cultivation resources from outside and passed them to Jianchen and Siyu in 2 portions. He did not harm the core of the heavenly resources, only taking away some minor details. However, even if it was just a side branch, it was still a rare treasure to infinite primes. It would be very difficult to obtain it in the outside world. This was because the heavenly resources had all been personally planted by Senior Feng. For a top expert at Senior Feng's level, many god-tier treasures of heaven and earth were useless to him. Thus, something that could be personally nurtured by him was naturally not an ordinary item. Jianchen and Siyu did not hold back at all. They directly accepted the precious resources from Xinjian. There was no need for any formalities between the 3 of them. At the same time, Jianqin wanted to experience the effects of the heavenly resources as well. Very soon, he ingested the heavenly resources that Shenzhen had passed to him. He could not help but sigh in amazement. The heavenly materials and earthly treasures that Shenzhen handed over were all insignificant. They were either some soil, flower dew, or a small piece of leaf. It could be said that they could only be considered as accessories. But even if they were just accessories, he could feel that these minor heavenly materials and earthly treasures had a very obvious effect on him. With the help of these treasures, there will not be a huge increase in strength within a short period of time. However, if one persisted in using them for a long period of time like Xinjian, the benefits would be immeasurable. Other than the lack of treasures that could strengthen one's bloodline, all other aspects of one's abilities would undergo an all-round increase. In fact, it might even undergo a complete upgrade. It might even be refined, thought Jianqin. He could not help but think of the Saint Blood Dao fruit. If the Saint Blood Dao fruit was still here, the heavenly resources planted here would truly form a complete set. Ingesting all the heavenly resources together could increase the strength of any cultivator in all aspects. Whether it be the bloodline, the body, or the soul, none of them would be left behind. They could truly make a person undergo a complete rebirth. Senior Feng prepared these things for himself in the beginning, so he could prepare for the final step, thought Jianqin. Since Senior Feng had said that he no longer needed the heavenly resources and had left them all to Xinjian, Jianqin could already predict just how powerful Xinjian would become once he ingested them. However, he also knew that Shenzhen was still far from that day. Although he was already an infinite prime, his cultivation was still a little too low compared to these rare heavenly resources. Ingesting them now would instead be a waste. I've already grasped many laws now. The laws of the sword and the laws of space are the most powerful, followed by the golden cores of laws I obtained from the 8 experts beneath the desolate plain. They are the laws of strength, the laws of creation, the laws of destruction, the laws of fire, the laws of curses, the laws of corrosion, and the laws of space. Among the 7 great laws, the law of space is at the forefront, followed by the law of strength. As for the remaining laws, my understanding of them is shallow. Even if I have a golden core of laws, I have almost no time to cultivate them. Next is martial soul force. However, once I leave the martial soul mountain, the rate at which I cultivate martial soul force slows down. If I want to cultivate martial soul force, it's best if I go to the martial soul mountain. Although I can cultivate the laws of corrosion, the laws of curses, the laws of fire, the laws of strength, the laws of destruction, and the laws of creation to infinite prime smoothly by absorbing the golden cores of laws, it'll be very difficult for me to become a 5th heavenly layer infinite prime, even if I absorb all the power within the golden cores of laws. Laws at the level of a 5th heavenly layer infinite prime won't be able to increase my current battle prowess by much. It'll only give me some supplementary abilities at most. Moreover, I might not even be able to reach the 5th heavenly layer. I'll have to spend many years on this. My current strength is still not enough. The only thing I can increase my strength with right now is the laws of the sword. There's no need for me to purposefully increase my laws of space for now. I haven't used up all the power of the spatial insect emperor's soul in me yet. When my strength increases again, the power of the spatial insect emperor will directly increase my laws of space to chaotic prime. Jianqin closed his eyes in thought. He began to examine himself and plan his future path. He had indeed grasped many laws now. Aside from the ones mentioned above, he had also comprehended the laws of samsara and the way of karma through the samsaric immortal exalt. However, he also understood the principle of biting off more than he could chew. Instead of wasting time comprehending laws that could not increase his battle prowess by much, he would be better off devoting all his thoughts, energy, and resources to comprehending the laws of the sword. Every time his laws of the sword reached a new level, his chaotic body would increase as well. Every time his strength increased, he would have an additional method to protect himself. When the day came when there were very few people in the world who could threaten him, would he still have to worry about not having enough time to comprehend other laws? I'll leave the 7 remnant souls behind for now. Jianqin was already equivalent to a chaotic prime now. He was no longer the puny divine king from the desolate plain. As a result, he could sense the 7 remnant souls in his consciousness even more clearly. Not only was his soul powerful now, but he was also protected by the sword spirits as well. As a result, the 7 remnant souls could no longer threaten him. The 7 remnant souls probably had never expected Jianqin to grow so quickly. After deciding on a direction, Jianqin thought about it and took out a divine hall in the end. He entered the divine hall and directly took out the fortune jade. He sat on it and comprehended the laws of the sword. The fortune jade was no small matter. Although Jianqin trusted Senior Feng very much, he still felt like there was a need to hide the existence of the fortune jade. The supreme quality saint artifact divine hall naturally could not hide from the senses of Senior Feng's soul. However, the fortune jade just happened to be a special treasure that could hide from the senses of the souls of all experts. Even grand exalts were no exception. Chapter 2999. Sitting on the fortune jade, Jianqin immediately felt the laws of the world that seemed to be hidden in the mist immediately clear up. Not only could he see them even more clearly, but he could comprehend them much more efficiently as well. It was far, far easier than when he did not use the fortune jade. However, the fortune jade's effects were slow and long-term. It was nowhere near as forceful and brutal as the fruit of ways, where it could allow people to break through to a whole new level of cultivation in an extremely short amount of time. Moreover, now that Jianqin's laws of the sword had reached his current level, the amount of effort and difficulty he needed to make every bit of progress would be several times more difficult or even several dozen times more difficult than before. So, even if he had the assistance of the fortune jade that allowed him to comprehend the grand Taos of the heavens and the earth much more easily, it was absolutely impossible for his sword Tao to advance from the intermediate stage of the sword immortal realm to the advanced stage of the sword immortal realm in a short period of time. Jianqin had no idea how long he spent in seclusion. However, when Senior Feng roused again, Siyu had woken up Jianqin as well. He had told her long ago that once Senior Feng roused, Siyu would immediately wake him up. The supreme quality saint artifact divine hall could block vision, but it could not block the senses of the soul of a primordial realm expert. Jianqin stowed the fortune jade away and reappeared in the outside world. Sure enough, he discovered that Senior Feng had already arrived. Senior Feng did not remain awake for long each time. It would only last around 4 to 6 hours at most. If it was short, he could only remain awake for 2 hours. Today, old man won't be telling you about history. It's useless to you no matter how much you know about it. Today, old man will be telling you about the ways of the world, said Senior Feng. Jianqin and Siyu were immediately overjoyed when they heard that. They both looked at Xinjian. They knew that it was all thanks to Xinjian that they could hear someone like Senior Feng personally tell them about the ways of the world. This was because they had already learnt from Xinjian that before they came to this nameless planet, Senior Feng would spend all his time on nurturing Xinjian whenever he was awake. He would either pass on a large amount of knowledge or personally guide Xinjian on various matters regarding cultivation. If it were not for Xinjian, the two of them would never have been able to enjoy such treatment. Afterwards, Senior Feng began to explain the true essence of the ways of the world. His cultivation level was just far, far too high. Even though he had not truly taken the final step and become an existence comparable to the ways of the world, there were endless laws that evolved when he spoke about the ways of the world. It directly affected the world, causing it to undergo shocking changes. Senior Feng seemed to have fused with space, with the world, and with the ways of the world. Every single voice that rang out from his mouth seemed to represent the truth of the world. It was filled with endless mysteries. Jianqin, Siyu, and Xinjian were completely enraptured. They became completely submerged, forgetting about themselves. However, Senior Feng's lecture did not last for too long. In just 2 hours, Senior Feng stopped and left once more. He went to the other side of the planet. Every time Senior Feng speaks about the ways of the world, he's only awake for a very short period of time. Shen Jian said with mixed feelings as he watched Senior Feng leave. Afterwards, the three of them continued to cultivate. Just like that, day after day, year after year. Their strength increased at a steady rate. Their comprehension of the ways of the world gradually deepened as well, advancing step by step. This was because a supreme expert was speaking about the ways of the world for them without any complaints. The content of his speech was filled with countless things. Jianqin, Xinjian, today, old man will speak about the way of the sword to the two of you. One day, Senior Feng woke up once again. Senior Feng, you know the way of the sword as well? Jianqin asked in surprise. Senior Feng shook his head. The old man has grasped the way of the sword. However, the 3,000 ways of the world all lead to the same destination. As long as you stand at a certain height, even if you haven't grasped any other ways, you'll still have that kind of insight. Moreover, your realms are really too low in the eyes of the old man. Therefore, with the old man's insight, it's completely enough to teach the two of you a lesson. After all, the experts of the way of the sword that the old man saw in the past were quite a few. Next, Feng Zun just started to speak about the way of the sword. Just like he'd said, even if he hadn't grasped the way of the sword, due to the fact that his realm was too high and coupled with the fact that he'd seen many experts of the way of the sword, it allowed him to possess an extraordinary insight that ordinary people couldn't imagine. He was even able to tell that Jianqin and Xinjian were lacking in the way of the sword with a single glance. If it was said that when an expert of the way of the sword passed on the way of the sword, it was completely based on his own comprehension of the ways of the world. However, the way of the sword that Senior Feng spoke about was more to point out a wide path forward, allowing one to avoid some bumps and chasms in advance. Even if one unknowingly walked into a wrong path on the way of the world, Senior Feng would be able to tell with a single glance and correct it. Siyu, old man will explain the way of slaughter to you. Under Senior Feng's careful guidance, Jianqin, Siyu, and Xinjian all improved by leaps and bounds. In particular, Jianqin would immediately enter the Divine Hall and use the Fortune Jade to cultivate after Senior Feng's lectures due to the Fortune Jade. As a result, he improved the most out of the three of them. My comprehension of the way of the sword has clearly increased by a lot. I'm getting closer and closer to the major achievement of Sword Immortal, Jianqin thought. He had a feeling that he had reached the 9th heavenly layer of Infinite Prime with his current comprehension of the way of the sword. Once I reach the major achievement of Sword Immortal, I'll officially reach Chaotic Prime. Jianqin was filled with eagerness. If he continued to improve steadily like this, that day would definitely not be too far away. However, that was under the premise that he had the Fortune Jade. Without the Fortune Jade, the time required would be several times longer, or even several dozen times longer. Master, this Senior Feng situation doesn't seem to be optimistic. At this moment, the sword spirit's voices suddenly rang out. Hearing this, Jianqin's heart trembled. He had a bad feeling. He believed that the sword spirits already knew about Senior Feng's occasional madness, but now that they had said something like that, it meant that they had discovered something else. That's right. Master, don't be fooled by Senior Feng's strength. He's also in a life and death situation now. If he's unlucky, he'll probably only live for 1,000 years at most. Qing Sua's voice sounded. Upon hearing that Senior Feng only had 1,000 years at most, Jianqin's heart immediately tightened. Jianqin was already indebted to Senior Feng's careful guidance over the past few days. Now that he knew that Senior Feng's situation was actually so serious, Jianqin's heart immediately rose to his throat. Chapter 3000. Master, actually, when you first came to this planet and met Senior Feng for the first time, Qing Sua and I had already sensed a unique presence from Senior Feng. It was as if he was extremely similar to us artifact spirits in certain aspects, said Qing Sua. Afterwards, after many observations, we finally confirmed one thing. The Senior Feng you speak of is currently sacrificing himself to fuse with an extremely powerful god artifact. Once he successfully fuses with the god artifact, he'll abandon his body and leave his race. He'll fuse with the extremely powerful god artifact perfectly. When that happens, he'll be the god artifact, and the god artifact will be him, the sword spirits explained to Jianchen. Their voices were filled with mixed feelings. Isn't that the artifact spirit? Does Senior Feng want to become the artifact spirit of some peak god artifact? Jianchen was astounded. At the same time, he found it hard to believe. Senior Feng's current cultivation had already reached the peak of perfection, and he was confident that no one below Grand Exalt was his opponent aside from the Saint Beast Kings of the Immortals world. He already possessed such terrifying strength, so why did he choose to walk an unheard-of path? He was actually trying to bury himself, abandoning his body and bloodline to become an artifact spirit. Jianchen was extremely confused by this. If it were not for his absolute trust in the sword spirits, he would not even have believed it. No, it shouldn't be the artifact spirit. If he succeeds, he'll become a god artifact himself, a god artifact that doesn't need to choose a master. He'll be the master himself, a special existence that can perfectly use all the power of a god artifact. It's fundamentally different from the artifact spirit. However, the path he's taking only exists in distant legends. At the very least, from the information Qing Sua and I have, we've never heard of anyone succeeding. And this Senior Feng is currently facing severe problems. If nothing unexpected happens, he won't be able to live past 1,000 years, Ziying said with great certainty. Ziying, Qing Sua, what exactly is wrong with Senior Feng? Jianchen became extremely stern. The god artifact he's fused with is definitely on par with the Azulite swords. At the very least, it's a peak god artifact on par with the Azulite swords and the Inata Tower. Normally, god artifacts like that are used by Grand Exalts. Even though Senior Feng is a half-step Grand Exalt, he hasn't set foot in the end, so it's impossible for him to succeed. In the end, the backlash from the god artifact's power will cause his soul to be destroyed. The reason why he struggles to remain clear-headed and often loses control is because of the backlash, Ziying said. Let alone the fact that he's not a true Grand Exalt, even if he really has stepped into the domain of a Grand Exalt. If he tries to fuse with a god artifact, it'll still be a dead end, because this path won't work. Qing Sua added. She did not have a good impression of Senior Feng's prospects either. Is there no other way? Jianchen asked rather reluctantly. This time, the sword spirits remained silent. They did not answer Jianchen. However, just when Jianchen was about to give up, Qing Sua's slightly hesitant voice rang out. If it were anyone else, even Grand Exalts, they wouldn't be able to help him. If it's Master, you might be able to try. Jianchen's eyes lit up when he heard that. He said, Qing Sua, are you saying that I have a way to help Senior Feng? Qing Sua remained silent for a while before slowly saying, Senior Feng has already fused with the god artifact, allowing him to borrow its power to a certain extent. It's exactly because of that we can sense a familiar presence from Senior Feng. However, the god artifact that Senior Feng has fused with possesses a sliver of the presence of chaos. It's also because of this that we believe that Master might be able to help Senior Feng. This is because Master's soul once fused with a strand of true chaotic force. If Master did not possess this strand of true chaotic force, he would not be able to help Senior Feng even if he reached major achievement with the chaotic body. Jianchen sucked in a deep breath. Then how can I help Senior Feng? Use the essence blood of chaos, Qing Sua said. Essence blood of chaos? Jianchen was stunned. He originally thought that helping Senior Feng would be extremely difficult, but he never thought that he only needed to use the essence blood of chaos. To him, this was as simple as it could get. Although it was impossible for any expert to possess a lot of essence blood, and they would be heavily injured if they used too much of it, they could slowly recover. The strand of true chaotic force that fused with Master's soul is not as simple as just transforming Master's soul. It is also subtly changing Master's constitution. Even though Master's essence blood of chaos is nowhere close to the level of true chaotic force, it has undergone a qualitative change. It contains a sliver of a higher level of chaotic force, and it shares a certain level of affinity with the powerful God artifact that Senior Feng has fused with. It's exactly because of this affinity that we believe that Master might be able to help Senior Feng. However, Master will definitely use up a large amount of essence, blood of chaos, if that's the case, which will greatly affect Master, Qing Sua said. Senior Feng bestowed us with the blood of Saint Fruits of Tao first. Afterwards, he personally guided us in cultivation. His kindness is as heavy as a mountain. How can some essence blood of chaos compare to this kindness? Jianqin said righteously. In the following days, Jianqin was no longer in the mood to cultivate. Instead, he patiently waited for Senior Feng to wake up again. Time passed silently. After who knows how long, Senior Feng finally appeared before the three of them again. He knew that he would not be awake for too long, so he treasured this short period of time. As soon as he saw Jianqin, Siyu, and Xinjian, he cut to the chase. Enter the old man. I'll continue my lecture. Senior Feng, please wait. Before Senior Feng could finish speaking, Jianqin immediately interrupted Senior Feng's lecture. He clasped his fist at Senior Feng, politely. Senior Feng, I have something important to discuss with you. Can we talk in private? Senior Feng was calm and approachable, although he was a half-step grand exalt, a supreme expert who could shake up the world. He did not give off the presence of a supreme expert at all. Instead, he seemed more like a benevolent senior to Jianqin and the others. Chapter 3001. Senior Feng, are you fusing with an extremely powerful God artifact right now? Jianqin did not beat around the bush and directly asked. He stared at Senior Feng in interest. A smear of surprise appeared in Senior Feng's eyes when he heard that. He stared at Jianqin deeply and chuckled. With your current cultivation level, it's impossible for you to know that. It must have been the two sword spirits hidden in you who told you that. However, the two sword spirits are extraordinary. Even though Old Man can sense that they have not completely recovered, they're still condensed from yin and yang qi after all. It makes sense that they can tell what's wrong with Old Man, Senior Feng. Do you know that the path you're taking right now is very dangerous? Jianqin growled. Senior Feng had a kind smile on his face as he said unconcernedly, Tell me, what else did the two sword spirits tell you? They said that the path Senior Feng is taking is a dead end. It's very difficult to pass through, said Jianqin. A dead end. Senior Feng laughed involuntarily. Sword spirits are still sword spirits after all. Even though they're extremely powerful azulate swords, they're still sword spirits in the end. Even if they have some experience, they're nowhere near as experienced as their former master. If their master was still alive, he would never have come to such a conclusion after seeing Old Man's situation. Senior Feng, are you confident that you can pass through this difficulty? Jianqin was rather stunned. In his mind, the sword spirits had basically always played the role of omniscient. As long as the sword spirits had come to a conclusion about something, there would basically be no other conclusion. This was the first time he had encountered a situation where he had refuted the sword spirits. Since Old Man is bold enough to take this path, he obviously has some confidence. It's just that he's not very confident, only 30%. However, even if he fails, Old Man won't completely die. He'll just have to pay a heavy price. This price is that a strand of Old Man's soul will be reincarnated, said Feng Xinjia. Impossible. You're walking a path of no return. Once you fail, your soul will be completely destroyed. How is it possible for you to reincarnate? The sword spirits appeared and conjured two illusionary figures above Jianshin's head. They confronted Feng Jinjie. Senior Feng looked at the sword spirits and slowly said, "You're only talking about the creatures you've seen. Indeed, there's probably not a single one of the creatures in the 6 worlds who can take this path, but Old Man is an exception." When he spoke up to this point, Senior Feng paused for a moment before he continued. In the past, there were countless clans in the sacred immortal world. Amongst these clans, there was a rather special clan called the Artifact Spirit Clan. The Artifact Spirit Clan possessed an innate ability to merge with any god artifact of the same level as them, allowing them to obtain all the abilities of the god artifact and greatly increase their strength. Although the true artifact spirit race has long since disappeared in the long river of history, when the artifact spirit race intermarried with other races, part of their bloodline power still leaked out. As a result, although the artifact spirit race has vanished, a portion of their bloodline has still been passed down. And Old Man is one of them. Feng Jinjie sighed gently when he reached there. It's just a pity that the sliver of bloodline in Old Man's body is not pure. It's just like Shenjian right now, where the bloodline is so thin that it's about to completely disperse. Otherwise, Old Man's chances of fusing with a god artifact would increase by 50% at the very least. The artifact spirit race. There's actually a race called the Artifact Spirit Race. Ziying and Qing Suo came to a realization. Although they had once followed Grand Exalts and heard many secrets, they were not true Grand Exalts after all. This was because at Grand Exalt's level of cultivation, they could see through the deepest mysteries of the world. As long as it was a race that had appeared in the world in the past, Grand Exalts could learn of their existence through the mysteries of the world. However, the artifact spirit did not possess this ability. As a result, Ziying and Qing Suo understood that their old master probably knew about the existence of the artifact spirit race. He just did not tell them. As artifact spirit, we can see some things that even Grand Exalts cannot. But at the same time, we artifact spirit cannot see some things that Grand Exalts can see that consoled themselves. The sword spirits comforted themselves. They could not help but look at Jianshin. They had finally found some confidence. At the very least, Grand Exalts could not see through the mysteries hidden on Jianshin. Ziying, Qing Suo, since Senior Feng has the bloodline of the artifact spirit race, can I still help Senior Feng right now? Jianshin asked. This was his blind spot. With his current knowledge and experience, he was unable to touch upon such a high-level topic, so he needed to ask the sword spirits. Of course you can. If we were only 70% confident before, we're 100% confident now. With Master's assistance, he'll definitely succeed in fusing with the god artifact, the sword spirit swore. Senior Feng also understood what the sword spirits were saying. His face immediately changed, and he said in surprise, "What did you say? Jianshin can help Old Man?" However, he shook his head soon afterward. Impossible. Even Grand Exalts, who are existences like the laws of the world, can't help me with the path that Old Man has taken. I can only rely on my own fortune and fortune. How can Jianshin have the ability to do that? The sword spirits smiled mysteriously when they heard that. Afterwards, they looked at Jianshin. Jianshin understood and immediately forced out a droplet of essence, blood from his body. When he took out the droplet of essence blood, he immediately felt his body weaken for a moment. Senior Feng, my essence blood is rather different. It might be able to help you. Jianshin controlled the droplet of essence blood to slowly float before the wind venerable. Impossible. Your current essence blood is far too weak in Old Man's eyes. Moreover, forget about your chaos essence blood that has yet to mature. Even if it is the chaos essence blood that has reached the advanced chaos strength level, it will still be of no use to the old me. Feng Zunjia shook his head and said. However, his words suddenly came to a halt when he spoke until this point. Immediately, his eyes stared intently at this drop of chaos blood. His entire breathing had stilled. At this moment, time seemed to have come to a standstill. Everything seemed to have stopped reviving. Only Senior Feng's eyes widened and shock, disbelief, and other expressions appeared on his aged face. This is primal chaos force. This is true primal chaos force. After a while, Senior Feng seemed to have finally confirmed it. He let out a murmur, and his entire person was in a daze. Chapter 3002. As the saying went, the higher one stood, the further one could see. Those who had reached Senior Feng's level of cultivation were naturally people who stood at the apex of the pyramid. As a result, he understood the power of chaotic force extremely well. From what he knew, chaotic force was a supreme power that could not be controlled by anyone, even if there were people who cultivated chaotic force in the world. The chaotic force they possessed was all fake. It was not true chaotic force at all. However, at this moment, he actually sensed a sliver of the presence of true chaotic force from Jian Chen's essence blood. Naturally, Senior Feng was extremely shocked. This was because the appearance of the strand of true chaotic force had completely shattered his understanding of the world, and his opinion of the ways of the world. The true primal chaos force actually appeared in a cultivator. In Senior Feng's opinion, this was absolutely impossible. Senior Feng was shocked for a long time before he finally regained his senses. He inhaled a deep breath of air and slowly calmed himself down, after which his gaze towards Jianchen underwent a tremendous change. What kind of gaze was that? It was a gaze that seemed as if he was looking at a monster or as if he had discovered a new continent. It was filled with all sorts of strangeness and disbelief. How did you do it? Senior Feng asked. When I used the fusion of the twin swords last time, I suffered a backlash from the chaotic force. However, I didn't die in the end. This strand of true chaotic force fused with my body at that time. Jianchen told him the truth without hiding anything. This was because he knew that such a method could only appear on him and could not be replicated. The fusion of the twin swords, the previous master of the twin swords died because of the fusion of the twin swords. Senior Feng murmured. He seemed to recall some past events and legends, and he became dazed. Senior Feng, just tell me if my chaos essence blood is useful or not. Jianchen hurriedly returned to the main topic. He knew that Senior Feng would not be awake for too long, so he was afraid that if he delayed any longer, he would run out of time before he could do anything. The Wind Venerable looked at Jianchen and sighed gently. I never thought that I, the Wind Venerable who has shaken up the Saints' world, would need the help of a junior in the end. The affairs of the world really are unpredictable. Whatever. Let's see if your special chaos essence blood is of any use to the old man. Master Feng gently touched the chaos blood essence with his finger. The chaos blood essence immediately merged with his fingertip and disappeared. Afterwards, the Wind Venerable sat down and closed his eyes as if he entered a state of meditation. Jianchen stared fixedly at the Wind Venerable as he waited patiently. His heart was filled with eagerness. He knew that even if the Wind Venerable did not die as the sword spirits had described, a 30% chance of success was still far too low. As a result, he hoped that the chaos essence blood with the Wind Venerable was the Wind Venerable. I hope the sword spirits aren't wrong this time, Jianchen thought. After learning about the artifact spirit clan, he understood that the sword spirits were not omnipotent. As a result, he could only truly relax after the Wind Venerable personally confirmed whether his chaos essence blood could help Senior Feng. Jianchen did not wait for long. Around 5 minutes later, the Wind Venerable finally opened his eyes slowly. His eyes were extremely bright as they shone brightly. There was undisguised excitement and joy in them. Senior Feng, what's the result? Jianchen immediately asked. The Wind Venerable laughed aloud. Jianqin, you really are the benefactor of the old man. I never thought that your chaos essence blood would actually help the old man fuse with the artifact. Jianqin's face lit up with joy when he heard that. He had completely stopped worrying. What truly helped the old man was the presence of the chaotic force. Even though the presence was weak, it was just too great. It could suppress the artifact to a certain extent. The Wind Venerable frowned again when he reached there. It's just that a droplet of chaos essence blood is nowhere near enough to the old man. Don't worry, Senior Feng. It's fine as long as it's useful to you. You don't need to worry about the chaos blood at all. I can provide you with as much as you need. Jianqin said very generously. Although the essence blood of any cultivator was extremely limited, it could be slowly recovered. The only flaw was that it would cause the cultivator to become heavily injured. At the same time, it would take quite some time to recover. The Wind Venerable stared at Jianqin sternly. Jianqin, do you know just how much damage this will cause you? To other experts, the loss of too much blood essence does indeed affect them greatly. Moreover, their recovery is also extremely slow. However, Senior Feng, don't forget that I cultivate the chaotic body. The greatest advantage of a chaotic body is its astonishing recovery in all aspects. Losing some essence blood is nothing to me, Jianqin said without any concern. All right. Since that's the case, I'll have to trouble you for the next few days. Senior Feng was not pretentious and gladly accepted. Jianqin smiled in a free and easy manner. He suppressed the feeling of weakness that came from his body and once again took out 20 drops of chaos essence blood and gave them to Wind Master. His face immediately paled from the loss of 20 droplets of essence blood. A sliver of haggard appeared on his face, as if he had been greatly injured. However, Jianqin didn't care about this. He endured the weakness of his body and said, Senior Feng, I can only give you some chaos essence blood every once in a while. I also need time to recover. Senior Feng stared at Jianqin deeply. His expression was extremely mixed. However, he said nothing. He took out a large pile of recovery pills and heavenly resources from his space ring and passed them to Jianqin. With a wave of his hand, he left with the 20 droplets of essence blood that belonged to Jianqin. This was the first time Senior Feng had left with a clear mind ever since they had arrived on this nameless planet. Shen Jian and Siyu both looked at Jianqin after Senior Feng's departure. They were puzzled and curious. Not only were they unable to hear anything when Jianqin spoke with Senior Feng, but even space was affected. The scene inside was blurry, so they were unable to hear or see what was happening inside. Jianqin, what's wrong with Senior Feng? Xin Jian asked. This was the first time he had seen Senior Feng act so strangely ever since he had come into contact with him. Brother, why are you so heavily injured? Siyu stared at Jianqin's pale face and asked curiously. Chapter 3003. Jianqin, are you telling the truth? Have you really found a way to heal Senior Feng? Xin Jian immediately roused up when he heard that. He became excited. Out of everyone present, the person who cared about Senior Feng's illness the most was definitely Xin Jian. Jianqin nodded with a smile. He gave Xin Jian a look of confirmation. He did not go into too much detail. Afterwards, he turned around and entered the Divine Hall. Now that he knew his essence blood could help Senior Feng, Jianqin naturally did not have the time to cultivate like before. He had just lost 21 droplets of essence blood, so he needed to recover as soon as possible. Moreover, he knew that he would definitely require an extremely large amount of essence blood to completely resolve the problem Senior Feng faced when fusing with the God artifact. It was definitely not something that could be satisfied with just a few dozen droplets of essence blood. It'll all depend on the chaotic body whether I can recover the lost essence blood or not. I hope the chaotic body doesn't disappoint me, Jianqin thought. Essence blood was extremely difficult to recover. It required a large amount of heavenly resources and time. Normally, it would take several decades, a century, or even longer for a cultivator to recover a single droplet of essence blood. Of course, people with special constitutions or special cultivation methods could recover essence blood at a slightly different rate. It could take longer or shorter time to recover essence blood. Some special divine beasts could even recover essence blood at a much slower rate than experts of the same level. As for Genshin's chaotic body, recovery was the specialty of the chaotic body, so Genshin would need much more time to recover essence blood than regular cultivators. At this rate, I'll need around a year to recover a droplet of essence blood. I've lost 21 droplets this time, so it'll take me 21 years to recover naturally. Genshin understood his recovery rate very quickly, and he could not help but frown. This recovery rate was extremely astonishing for any other primordial realm expert, but he still found it to be too slow. This was because Senior Feng required several hundred droplets of essence blood at the very least. If he could only recover a droplet a year, it would take him several hundred years. If a few hundred drops were not enough, it would require over 1,000 drops of chaos essence blood. That would take 1,000 years. Genshin had cultivated for less than 1,000 years till now. I can only try these divine pills. Genshin opened the spatial ring that Senior Feng had given him. This spatial ring contained many jade bottles, and without exception, all of them were divine level pills. Their grades were not low, at least Zhongping divine pills, and there were even a large number of Shangping divine pills. After all, these were pills that came from Senior Feng's hands. Some low-grade divine pills naturally wouldn't enter the eyes of a powerhouse like Senior Feng. This is the blood congealing divine pill. This is the divine blood immortal pellet. This is the heaven-seizing regeneration Dan. Within the space ring, Genshin immediately recognized quite a few divine tier pills. He then immediately took out a bottle of divine blood condensing pills. Opening the bottle, he found 10 divine blood condensing pills lying inside. He took out a divine blood condensing pill and swallowed it. For hours later, he slowly opened his eyes and thought to himself, a single divine blood condensing pill can recover 2 drops of chaos essence blood. A bottle of 10 can recover 20 drops. He glanced at the spatial ring. There were 4 bottles of divine blood condensing pills, enough to recover 80 drops of chaos essence blood. Genshin swallowed the remaining 9 divine blood condensing pills in one gulp, focusing all his efforts on recovering chaos essence blood. Sacred immortal realm, burial realm. Not only were there many broken star fragments in the chaotic cosmos, but there were also many fragments of continents floating around. At this very moment, Ada, Air, San, and Si were exploring a certain ruin on one of the continents. I feel more and more like there's something off about this place. It's as if there's something hidden in the void. I have the same feeling. Moreover, the ripples of space here are extremely abnormal. But this is the burial realm after all. Danger lurks everywhere. It's hard to say if this is a sign of some kind of danger. The 4 brothers carefully explored the region. At this moment, another ripple appeared in the void. It was like a beating heart. It did not cause too much of a disturbance, nor did any presence leak out. It was as if a mysterious power had isolated the entire place. There seems to be something similar to a spatial barrier. Come, let's work together and try breaking through this space, Ada called out. The 4 of them immediately worked together and used a sword technique. They shot out a resplendent streak of light towards the space there. The slash was completely soundless. The 4-sword chi seemed to have struck a soft sponge, causing the space around it to cave in. The spatial barrier seemed to have run out of energy long ago. After a stalemate with the 4 brothers' sword chi, it shattered in the end. As soon as the spatial barrier shattered, a presence that seemed to contain the presence of ways leaked out. The four brothers all shuddered when they sensed the presence. Immediately, they felt like the laws of the world were evolving in their heads. However, at this moment, over a dozen streaks of light flew over from afar. The person in the lead was clearly an infinite prime, while the cultivators behind him ranged from over-gods to divine king. Clearly, they were the elders of some sect in the saints' world. They had come with their disciples for training. This is the origin of ways. The infinite prime clearly possessed extraordinary insight. He recognized the mysterious power with a single glance. He was extremely excited. Quick, cast down a formation and seal up the surroundings. We can't let the origin of ways leak out. Once other experts sense it, this thing that's right in front of us will end up in their hands, the infinite prime said excitedly as his face reddened. He immediately began casting down the formation. As for the four brothers, he ignored them. He did not take the mere four divine king primes seriously at all. The origin of ways. There's actually the origin of ways formed when a grand exalt passed away here. Ha ha. At this moment, a great laugh rang out. 3 infinite primes who happened to pass by discovered the origin of ways as well. So they suddenly descended from outer space. The infinite prime who had arrived first revealed an ugly expression. He said sternly, "Friends, this is a place discovered by our 7-symbol sect. It belongs to our 7-symbol sect. I don't care if you're from the 7-symbol sect or the 8-symbol sect. None of you can leave here alive today. Brothers, let's attack together and kill them first. This origin of ways belongs to the 3 of us." One of the 3 infinite primes smiled viciously. Ha 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 ha. Mere infinite primes want to covet the origin of ways. How foolish. However, before the 3 of them could do anything, the pressure of a chaotic prime suddenly descended. The great voice deafened the 4 infinite primes. A chaotic prime. Oh no. The expressions of the infinite primes changed drastically. At this moment, 4 stone pillars descended from the sky. They pierced through space with a chaotic prime, crushing down on the 4 infinite primes with lightning speed. Chapter 3004. Boom, 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 boom. With 4 booms, the 4 infinite primes were slain in a single instance. The disparity in strength was just too great, such that the 4 of them could not put up any resistance at all. Elder, the disciples of the 7 symbols sect all cried out sorrowfully. The divine king disciples fled into the distance as soon as they saw that the situation was bad. But very quickly they collided with an invisible array formation and were bounced back. After all, this was a trapping formation cast down by a chaotic prime. They were only divine king at most, so even if they used various secret techniques, they would struggle to break through. As for the chaotic prime, he did not take any further action after killing the 4 infinite primes. He could only sense the power of the formation permeate the space, growing stronger and stronger. Perhaps in his eyes, these divine kings were even less than ants. At the same time, he was confident that it would be impossible for these divine kings to escape, so he did not take them seriously. Instead, he used every second he had to cast down the formation. He did not want to waste any time on these divine kings. However, he'd underestimated the quintessence of the Grand Tao. The quintessence of the Grand Tao was such a high-level existence, so how could it be something that an ordinary formation could seal and trap? Moreover, the space in the burial region was unstable. Spatial storms could occur at any time, so even the formations personally cast down by chaotic primes would be affected in the space there. As a result, even when he was almost done casting down the formation, the presence of the origin of ways that leaked out was still unstoppable. God damn it! The chaotic prime naturally discovered that he could not trap the origin of ways. However, he did not stop casting down the formation. Instead, he moved even faster. However, the nature of the spirit formation had undergone some changes. It had become a sort of defensive grand formation. Since he could not hide the origin of ways, he cast down an impenetrable formation to stop his enemies and make more time for him to collect the origin of ways. This presence seems to be the origin of ways. It can't be wrong. This is definitely the source of the Great Path. Quick, send a message to the Supreme Elder. The essence of the Great Path has appeared in the ruins of the sacred immortal world. Send news back to the clan as quickly as possible. In a short period of time, more and more people learnt about the emergence of the origin of ways. All sorts of strange methods of communication flew through the various regions of the sacred immortal world. The news spread in all directions like a storm, reaching the 5 sacred grounds of the sacred immortal world very quickly. What? Is it true that a great Tao origin has appeared in the burial region? With the appearance of the source of the Great Path, there must be something left behind by a Grand Exalt. It might even be a Grand Exalt's inheritance. Immediately gather all the elders and follow the old man to the burial region. The Great Path's origin will definitely start a battle between a dragon and a tiger. Immediately send the news back to the sect and have them send reinforcements as soon as possible. Immediately, the presences of many primordial realm experts erupted from the 5 sacred grounds of the spirit's world. The primordial realm experts who remained in the sacred grounds all hurried towards the tomb region in groups. Boom! At the place where the origin of the Great Path appeared, there was a loud roar in the void. Some of the people who had been moving around in the burial zone all this time were shocked. At the same time, the primordial realm experts nearby had arrived first and began to attack the formations. Many of them were chaotic primes at the same level of cultivation as the person who cast down the formation. With their insight, they could naturally tell with a single glance that someone had purposefully cast down a formation to obstruct them in an attempt to monopolize the origin of ways. Everyone move out. Get through the formation first. Once the formation is destroyed, the origin of ways will be ours. Everyone will get a share. Otherwise, once this person has enough time and absorbs all the origin of ways, we won't be able to obtain anything. Primordial realm experts constantly called out from the people attacking the formation. They were extremely anxious. Immediately, all of the people attacking the spirit formation began to put in even more effort. They were all using their full strength. Under the attacks of so many primordial realm experts, the formation did not last for very long. It shattered loudly very soon, and the 2 medium quality god artifacts that had been fused into the formation to strengthen it shattered as well. Spurt. With the destruction of the god artifacts, the chaotic prime who cast down the formation was affected as well. He vomited blood as soon as he opened his mouth. He looked at the many primordial realm experts that surged in from outside as deep regret filled his eyes. This was because he understood that not only was he unable to monopolize the origin of ways, but his extravagant hopes of absorbing a little more had failed as well. However, he was vigilant as well. He looked at the chaotic primes who charged towards him aggressively and immediately called out, "Everyone, the origin of ways is flowing away at every moment. It can't last for very long. Wasting any time is a huge waste. So why don't you absorb it quickly?" After a moment of hesitation and consideration, the chaotic primes all gave up on the idea of attacking the person who cast down the formation. Instead, they all landed on the ground and absorbed the origin of ways as quickly as they could. However, at this moment, the world rumbled. The universe was turned upside down, and the laws fell into a mess. An extremely huge spatial crack suddenly appeared, piercing through the sky and earth. It devoured the entire piece of damaged land in a single instance. Immediately, the world changed before the eyes of all the primordial realm experts. The familiar landscape of the tomb region vanished, and the vast river of stars vanished as well. All they saw was darkness where they could not even see their own fingers. At this moment, if someone was in the burial zone, they would discover that the broken piece of land where the origin of the great Tao had appeared had completely disappeared from the burial zone. The place where the broken piece of land had been was completely empty. There was only a spatial crack that was less than 10 meters long that remained there for a long time, and it did not close even after a long time. The entire piece of land where the origin of ways had appeared had actually been devoured by the spatial crack. It was impossible to tell from the outside. Who knew how many similar spatial cracks existed in the chaotic world of the tomb region? This is truly splitting apart the world. That's the burial region we're talking about. To want to separate the space in the burial region, just how much power does one have to be able to do that? All the primordial realm experts no longer cared about absorbing the origin of ways on the damaged piece of land. They all stared at the surroundings, and their faces paled in a single instant. Deep fear filled their faces. They were knowledgeable, so they could tell long ago that the ability to split the world was not accomplished through the laws of space. Instead, a supreme expert had used the extremely great power of laws to forcefully cleave off the region of space and hide it. Such means and ability could only be achieved by those peerless experts whose cultivation was unfathomable. Even a supreme figure like that had come for the origin of ways made all the primordial realm experts present shiver. Suddenly, in this world shrouded in darkness, a ray of light appeared high in the sky. Everyone could not help but raise their heads. They all stared at the source of light that had suddenly appeared in the sky. The source of light was a woman in snow-white clothes. She was quite young, only in her 20s. She hovered in the sky as she shone with the light of ways. The light from her made her seem like a resplendent pearl in the darkness, illuminating the entire world. She was the only thing in the world. All the primordial realm experts in the boundless darkness below became even paler when they saw the woman. Even though the woman did not give off any pulses of cultivation, they were unable to sense her cultivation at all. Chapter 3005. Senior, I don't want this source of the great path anymore. Please show mercy and let me leave. Senior, we're just curious and came here to take a look. We definitely have no intention of fighting for the great Tao source. We'll leave this place immediately. Many of the primordial realm experts spoke out from below. They came up with many reasons and excuses in an attempt to absolve themselves and leave. This was because the peerless cultivator who appeared in the sky had actually used a great technique to hide the entire void. With such a motive, it was obvious that this peerless cultivator also coveted the source of the great path here. This immediately caused all the experts trapped here to feel uneasy in their hearts, as if a great calamity was about to befall them. Even though everyone here coveted the origin of ways very much and knew that as long as they absorbed enough origin of ways, their future path of cultivation would become extremely smooth. Reaching Grand Prime would only be a matter of time. However, in the face of such a terrifying expert, they could not summon the slightest bit of greed in their hearts. There was only boundless coldness. The woman in white high up in the sky did not speak. Her face was expressionless, and her gaze was cold. The power of the great path around her seemed to be able to crush the heavens and annihilate thousands of stars. She was extremely powerful. At that moment, she clenched her hand in the air. Immediately, an illusionary brush appeared. It was not an actual brush. Instead, it had been condensed from her boundless energy. She held the brush and gently swung it at the primordial realm experts below. With that stroke, the mysterious laws of the world seemed to be activated. Ripples appeared in space, and when the ripples reached the primordial realm experts below, both infinite primes and chaotic primes vanished into thin air. Or perhaps it could be said that they were directly evaporated, completely erased. Nothing was left behind. It was as if at this very moment the entire void, the entire world, all the scenery, and even all the cultivators, whether strong or weak, had become scenery on a picture scroll. And this brush seemed to have some sort of erasing function, able to erase all the scenery and existence on this scroll. This erasure was definitely not as simple as it seemed on the surface. It represented a complete disappearance, which was equivalent to the destruction of one's body and soul. At that moment, The noisy surroundings fell silent. All the primordial realm experts and the godhood cultivators that had been brought over by the elders vanished. Only 4 people were exceptions. They were the 4 odd brothers who had first discovered this place. However, at this moment, the 4 brothers paled as well. They stared at the primordial realm experts who had vanished in a single moment, and they seemed like they had seen a ghost. "Senior, we definitely won't dare to absorb even the slightest bit of the origin of the Grand Tao. We hope that Senior will let us 4 brothers leave." The 4 brothers cupped their fists at the woman in the sky. Although they did not know why the 4 of them had not disappeared, they did not dare to have any thoughts about the source of the great path. The woman in the sky slowly descended. She arrived before the 4 brothers and looked at them fearfully. There was an indescribable strangeness in her eyes, as well as some mixed feelings. In the end, she sighed gently and said, "Stay behind. The origin of the Grand Tao is extremely rare in the 6 worlds, so do your best to absorb as much of it as possible." The 4 brothers looked at each other when they heard that. They had personally witnessed the terror of the woman before them. So many infinite primes and chaotic primes had vanished from her hands so easily. However, at that moment, such a terrifying expert was treating them with such a gentle attitude. The 4 odd brothers were filled with confusion. "Senior, why are you helping us 4 brothers?" Ada asked. The woman in white slowly made her way towards the outlet of the origin of the Grand Tao. She said without even looking back, "Because we come from the same place." Her gentle voice was filled with melancholy. Afterwards, the woman in white said no more. She was enveloped by the origin of the Grand Tao, absorbing it as quickly as she could. The 4 brothers became even more confused by the woman in white's answer. They wanted to ask more questions, but when they saw how the woman had already begun cultivating, they could only shut their mouths obediently and begin absorbing the origin of the Grand Tao. As they absorbed the origin of the Grand Tao steadily, the burial region outside was bustling. More and more experts poured into the burial region from all directions, searching through every inch of the place in search of the rumored origin of the Grand Tao. However, none of them had thought that the entire piece of land where the origin of the Grand Tao had appeared had already been hidden in a spatial crack by the woman in white. Primordial realm experts would pass by the spatial crack from time to time, but none of them discovered anything strange. Within the Thor clan hidden within the Annihilation Lightning Domain in an unknown region of space in the Saints' world, a majestic divine hall stood there silently like an ancient beast. At the entrance of the divine hall, 2 white-haired old men sat there like stone statues. They did not give off any presence at all, making them seem like ordinary people. At this moment, the 2 old men opened their eyes at the same time. One of them said, "We've just received news that the origin of the Grand Tao has appeared in the burial region of the spirit's world. This great Tao origin source is of enormous help to a saint monarch. We have to seize it no matter what, even if we have to pay a great price." Another old man spoke as well. Although his voice was old, it carried an unquestionable charm. The 2 old men possessed extremely great statuses in the Thor clan. They were revered by many people, and all the members of the Thor clan referred to them as elders. The 2 of them did not have names in the Thor clan, or perhaps no one knew their names. They were only known as elders of the left and right. It's just that the passageway to the spirit's world is personally guarded by the sacred Lord of Suppressing Origin. Because of what happened in the past, the sacred Lord of Suppressing Origin definitely holds grudges against our Thor clan. He probably won't let us go to the ruins of the spirit's world so easily this time, said the elder of the left with a frown.